Oops. All right, this will be interesting. So I'm dealing with a flooded basement. If you guys didn't know that I was gone for a couple days, visiting family and whatnot, I came back home to a pretty flooded basement, and let's see. I almost had looks like it could have been a fire. Look at that. That was on the ground where it got wet. It's just a charger. I can't see it. There you go. Hi, Nash. Yeah. Anyways, enough of that. It's gonna take a couple days for it to dry. It's really humid now and stinky. And I got towels that are just soaking up all of the stuff. Put it in the washer and dryer and wait it out, and then back to mopping up what I can. So if you hear some sloshing, that's that's me sloshing around. So okay, without further ado, tonight's segment is just going to be remembering Ed Schultz as viewers, because a lot of people just don't really know him personally. There's a few that do, and you could watch RTs remembering Ed Schultz, and I might play that back. There's just going to be a couple of videos that I'm going to play back, and people want to come in, they can talk about him, what they remember from him, some of the memorable videos, snippets of him that they remember, and just kind of talking about just Ed Schultz, journalism, and a whole bunch of other stuff. I mean, you guys got to fill me in because I've been gone a week, and driving through nowhere Nebraska, nowhere South Dakota, and nowhere Wyoming. It's great, but no reception. So all right, I'll switch over and I'll talk to you guys in a bit.
I'm Anya Parampil reporting this evening from Washington, D.C. Tonight, we remember someone very near and dear to our hearts here at RT America. Please join us in mourning the death of our esteemed colleague, Ed Schultz, host of The News with Ed. Ed passed away peacefully in his sleep at his home in Washington, D.C. earlier this morning. He was 64 years young. This news has shocked and devastated our office, and those of you who watch his show can only imagine Ed's constant energy and animated personality didn't only electrify the airwaves, but our newsroom as well. RT's editor-in-chief, Margarita Simonian, released a statement today reading, quote, "We are devastated by the news of the sudden death of our brilliant anchor, one of the best TV journalists in America, Ed Schultz. When the campaign against RT America began and then was forced to register as a foreign agent, Ed set an example for all of us, saying, 'Let them call me what they want. I'm going to speak the truth no matter what.' Indeed, Ed set an example for all of us in many ways as a veteran of the business. I can speak from personal experience when I say Ed made an effort to mentor the younger reporters here at RT America. And I can speak for all of us in saying we recognize it was a tremendous honor to work with Ed. We only wish that experience hadn't been cut so short. Now the best we can do is to continue to do what Ed loved most, speak the truth no matter what they call us, and we'll do our best to meet his standard. This newscast is dedicated to remembering Ed, and tonight our hearts are with the Schultz family. To reflect on Ed's life, I want to turn first to Larry King, host of Politicking and Larry King Now on RT America. Larry, it wasn't that long ago, only January of last year, that you, me, and Ed were all in this very studio covering the inauguration of Donald Trump. What do you personally remember the most about working with Ed?
Well, first, Ed was a wonderful guy, a great co-worker, decent, nice human being, great family man. I've known him for years. When I did my show on CNN, Ed was a frequent guest. Then he was a pundit then. Ed would come from the Midwest, North Dakota and Minneapolis. He brought his very liberal views to MSNBC. And then he came to the middle and became an anchor at RT. I thought he was a terrific anchor. He told it straight down, gave you the facts as they were warranted. He was a wonderful person and a great asset to any news organization. RT is going to have a tough time filling that hole.
We certainly will, Larry. You're from New York and you know this business well. You mentioned the fact Ed came from North Dakota. How many people do you know come from the Midwest like that and break into the big time media? I mean, what made Ed so special?
The only Dakotan I know who made it big was Tom Brokaw. Ed was special because he was Ed. He was down home. You knew he was a regular guy as soon as you saw him. There was no airs about Ed. He was certainly Midwest. He was down home American. You came through. You knew you could trust him. You knew he was a good guy. He wasn't going to snow you. He worked hard at what he did. We worked together in London on the Brexit show we did. We did the inaugural together with you, Anna. He was just, I imagine, by the way, was he ill? Or did he have a sudden heart attack? What happened?
I believe it was a heart condition, but it came unexpected. I don't think we know much more at this time. I'm wondering, Larry, if you can share any personal stories of your experiences with Ed, just to give viewers an idea of the kind of man he was.
Well, often when we worked together, before we went on, we would have discussions about sports. Ed started as a sports announcer, so we talk a lot about sports. We talk about the current news. Ed has his positions, I had mine. But we never, either of us, one thing we both did was leave our ego at the door. We talked about that a lot. I never, ever brought my opinions to an interview show. I never thought of myself that way, and neither did Ed. Once he was an anchor, then he was delivering the news to you, and you got the news through him to the audience. And I always credit him with that because he was always fair, balanced, a true journalist. I always enjoyed my moments with him, and unfortunately, I never got a chance to socialize with Ed. I wish I had. All of our dealings were either when he'd come on with me at CNN and we'd talk by remote, or when I worked with him, I had the wonderful occasions to work with him at RT America in either Washington, New York, or London. He was a delight to be around.
He certainly was. And Ed's tireless commitment to the show came from his love for the American working class. Do you think any voice like that exists anymore in this country?
I sure hope it does. Ed was a product of labor. He was a good example of the working class. I'm sure it exists. Media is so broad now, with 500 channels and so many areas where you get information with the internet. I'm sure those voices, they can't have disappeared. They must be somewhere in America. They're not I don't think they're in the 35 percentile, but they're there. They will be heard. I have a lot of faith in America, a lot of faith in people. Ed was a good example of what America is. And I'm going to miss him terribly, and I'm sure there are voices out there that will echo Ed's. And as I'll repeat again, RT is going to have a tough time filling that hole. Anna, are you going to sit in for a while?
I don't think we have any answers as to what's next here. But I want to ask finally, Larry, what legacy would you say Ed leaves behind in journalism?
He leaves behind a legacy of honesty, direct reporting, great on camera, great journalist. He will be long remembered and long missed.
All right. Thanks so much, Larry King, for joining us to remember our dear friend, Ed Schultz.
Thanks, Anna. He'll be missed.
He will. We're turning now to Brent Jabor, a producer for the News with Ed. First of all, Brent, sorry, because I know you probably knew Ed better than anyone here. Working for him for, what, 9 years?
Yeah.
Give people an idea of what it was like to work with Ed on a daily basis.
Ed, you see him on television and you say, that's got to be an act. It wasn't an act. He's a genuine person. He does everything that he believes in. And he knows specifically what he wanted. He knew, you know, what was going to hit with people and how to also make that entertaining. He knowing that he couldn't just be a voice piece for working class Americans and things like that, but also he just was a genuine person. And sometimes I didn't agree with him. Sometimes other people didn't agree with him, but he was always willing to hear you out when you didn't agree with him. And I think that, especially when he was mostly a commentator with his MS days and his radio show where I started working with him, and a lot of people don't want to open up themselves like that, but Ed was willing. You could change his opinion, you know, and he was, I mean, just as an overall boss, he was great. He was understanding. He didn't, you know, he asked what he thought you could do, and he pushed you to do the things that you could do, you know. He gave me confidence that I didn't have before I worked with him.
Help viewers understand the kind of man Ed was. I mean, he was your friend. Give people an idea what it was like knowing him.
You know, he was very, very generous. He and his wife are basically, you know, second parents to my wife and I. And I wanted to share this story because this is the man he is, and this is how he's always treated me. A couple years ago, we were in New York City, and we had dinner with some friends of ours that used to work with him. And one of them was recently engaged, and they kept asking me, when are you going to get engaged to your girlfriend who I'd been with for about 6 years at the time? And I was afraid. I said I didn't know how to go about it. I didn't know what to do. So the next day, we went out to go film something, and he's like, why don't you put the camera away? Let's go get some lunch. And we walked up to the Diamond District in New York, and he took me into a diamond store and said, why don't you get an engagement ring today? And I did. And, you know, I mean, if not for him, I mean, it would have happened. I love my wife very much. But if not for Ed Schultz, I wouldn't have taken that step in that time when I should have. Because, like I said, he gives you the confidence to do what you're capable of. And that's the kind of person he is. And I mean, his wife and he have invited us into their home. You know, when I moved here to take this position at RT after working with him for many years, I stayed with him for about a month while I was getting myself together, while I was finding my position. And that's the kind of person he was. He was a friend. And, you know, I remember New Year's Eve, 2016, he just texted me and said how proud he was of me. And that meant more. It meant more to me than anything.
What drove Ed to do the news every day? I mean, he worked incredibly hard. I don't think people realize how much he was in here, how the hours he worked and what he put into doing the show.
You know, he just cared. He cared about the issues that he was talking about. Healthcare for all, you know, labor unions and working class Americans, middle class Americans, poor Americans. He cared about those issues. You know, it would tear him up. It would make him upset when things weren't working out the way that they were. And he cared so much. I mean, he went to healthcare clinics in New Orleans, like while there was the fight for the Affordable Care Act. Nobody else was doing that. Ed Schultz was there. Ed Schultz was there with sick people who hadn't seen a doctor in 15, 20 years and found out they had serious, serious conditions. And he just cared. He was a genuine, genuine person.
You worked with Ed in Fargo, I believe, and I just want you to give viewers an idea of how treasured he was in that community, and what are people telling you today now that they've heard this terrible news?
Well, first of all, the outpouring of support for Ed has come from all over the nation, and that's amazing. And I think one of the things about Ed is that, yeah, he really made a name for himself in Fargo, and he was, you know, there was a time where if you were listening to the radio in North Dakota, about 45% of them were listening to Ed Schultz. I mean, that's how polarizing and how he brought people in to his program. And people didn't love what he was saying. I mean, it's a very conservative area, and he was a liberal talk show host. Let's not forget. But you know what? People loved listening to him because they knew he would listen to the other side, and they knew he was going to entertain them. He was a great, I mean, not just a newsman, but he was a great entertainer. And I mean, you wouldn't believe today, since this news is broke, I mean, hundreds of people have reached out to me from all walks of life, just telling me about how much he meant to them and how he fought for the causes that they believed in. He was there for the working man, and how, you know, a lot of people you see on the news today on all the networks, on here and things like that, Ed gave them a chance and then fought for them after that, and, you know, and said, hey, this is a guy we need to sign, or this is a person that we need to have on more because they're saying great things. And I mean, you could, his influence on news can be seen across all the major networks today.
In the about 30 seconds we have left, how would you say Ed would want to be remembered?
Just as believing or standing up for what he believed in, speaking truth to power, you know, giving a voice to people who didn't have a voice. I think those were all his catchphrases, something about voice for the voiceless. But that was him. I mean, and I think that's what he'll want to be remembered. And I hope, you know, you asked Larry if anybody can hold up that mantle for the working man and all that stuff. I hope somebody does, because they need it. And losing this is a big loss of a big advocate for labor and working class Americans.
That's absolutely true. It's just a tragedy all around. Brent Jabor, producer for The News with Ed. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Anya.
And we're joined now by Mitch Caesar, the former state of Florida Democratic Party chair. He was a frequent guest on The News with Ed as well. Mitch, what was your reaction upon learning the news of the death of our friend Ed Schultz?
Obviously shocked. I had spoken to Ed not too long ago. I think he was due to come back from his little vacation next week. It's a terrible loss, as Brent said, and I appreciate Brent's comments. He knew him probably better than most, other than Ed's family, and of course Larry King's very kind and precise comments. You know, Ed loved politics. I think that has to be remembered. He loved talking about it. He loved having a strong opinion on it. As said, he was a big advocate for the men and women of labor and for those who couldn't fight for themselves, those who were downtrodden, and just loved to be involved in the discussion of politics and try to get people to think.
And what was your personal relationship with Ed like? What would you want people to know about him as a man?
Well, I was very blessed. I had a relationship with Ed when he had the radio show. Then I had the opportunity with him on MSNBC and, of course, here on RT, which I'm very grateful for, to Ed and to everyone else. The thing that I kept coming back to me this afternoon, which I'm so sad, frankly, is the relationship I had when he and his wife would go out with myself and my wife. And after an adult beverage or two, he and I would get very boisterous, talking about politics, laughing. We did that on a regular basis. And eventually the wives, as they would do, would turn to us and say, you know, both of you are crazy. And we'd laugh and go, yes, what's the point? We always had a great time together, the four of us. And I truly, truly will miss that forever.
And what did you enjoy the most about being a guest on Ed's show? What made him a unique host?
Well, a lot of times we would obviously agree. You know, Ed was a progressive, diehard, loved Bernie Sanders. Sometimes we'd agree, sometimes not. Sometimes he would challenge me on the air, which was fine. I enjoyed that too. Always with a little sparkle in his eye, as he did when he would challenge anybody to force a discussion and a clear, honest examination of the issues. It was always fun being on with Ed. It was never work.
Ed also had an amazing grasp on American politics and was always happy to share his critiques of the Democratic Party. What do you think the Democrats can learn from Ed's legacy?
I think it's something we need to continue to learn that we haven't fully learned, and Ed and I have talked about this, that there are people there who are hurting, whether it's in the Midwest or anywhere else. They can't be left behind. Democrats try not to leave anybody behind, but I think we have to realize that perhaps that the people who live in the South may slightly disagree with the people who live in the Midwest or the Northeast, and that all opinions have to be at least considered.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for sharing your memories of Ed and Mitch Caesar.
Thank you for the opportunity.
We go now to Lionel of Lionel Media, who joins us from New York. Lionel, as a media critic, what role do you think Ed played in the world of journalism?
Well, his role is obvious, but I'll tell you more than any kind of critic. Anya, I've known him for a long time because we were both in the talk radio business, and I've known him before all of his television manifestations, at least nationally. And this was a great guy, loving husband. He and his wife were so close. You'd see him holding hands. He was a mensch. Bigger than life, big garrulous guy, great sense of humor. I got to tell you something from just a human point of view. I would text him. I'll always have these. This kills me because I would text him something that I thought was really important. And invariably, his response would be, who is this? Who's texting me? I said, Ed, it's me. Put my number, please, in your phone so you recognize me the next time I send you this important news. Sure enough, later on, I'd send something. Who is this? So we went back and forth. He had a great sense of humor. Remember, Anya, his laugh. When he saw something, he did not suffer fools gladly. We all know that. But he was this human. And I loved the way he and his wife were so in love, and his family. And I used to kid him about it. I said, Ed, you want to spend your time in a boat catching a fish? And he'd laugh about it. He was just genuine. And I want people to understand, and you know this, and anybody who's ever worked with him, yes, there was the professional and the passionate. By the way, in Fargo, that scene you were, I was there on the stage, he was a rock star. And I don't mean somebody who loved him because of just the fact that he was in TV or radio, but they loved him because he was them. He mirrored them. There will never be another Ed.
And it says
never.
It says so much about Ed that he would go back and do an event like that in Fargo after making it as a big time media guy here on the East Coast.
Absolutely. And you know what, Anya, you can tell when some people, they don't have it. They stand there and there's this humanity that just doesn't exude. It doesn't connect. This was who he was. He was a rare talent. But the thing that I want everybody to understand, how he loved his wife. And we all know the travails. He spoke about it. This was a loving, generous man. They were so in love. It's so wonderful to see holding hands again, the affection. He was in our neighborhood. We'd see him a lot in New York when he was there. We've known him, my wife and I, for so long. His family must be so crushed. I'm so honored to have known him and so honored to be able to have chances where I could say I work with him. But aside from that, Anya, the humanity, the actual humanity, and frankly, it's something that you don't always say in this business. He was a mensch, and he will be so missed, and there will never be anybody like him. And everything you're hearing right now is from the heart. I can't, and I know I can't believe he's not with us. I'm expecting at any moment just to see him or hear him. It still hasn't, it's not hit yet. I loved Ed, and I love Ed, and I always will.
It's incredibly difficult to be in this office. You know, we were all expecting him to be back here on Monday, and we're just going to have to learn to get used to life without his smile in the hallway. It's going to be very difficult. Lionel, thank you so much for coming
and listen,
on.
Thank you. This coverage, I know it's very difficult. This is such a tremendous tribute to him, Anya. Thank you for this. And his family thanks you as well.
Thanks, Lionel.
Thank you.
We want to turn to some of the members of our team here on RT America, the correspondents. We have Steve Christakos, Ashley Banks, and Dan Cohen here, all joining me to talk about just what it was like to work with Ed. And you know, guys, for me, it was pretty easy to look back on the time that I spent working with Ed. We hosted election night and inauguration night together, and there was always one moment that really stuck out to me as just classic Ed. And that was after it was realized Trump was going to be the next president of the United States. At the Javits Center in New York City, the Clinton campaign trotted out John Podesta instead of having Hillary come out and give some sort of concession speech. And after that happened, Ed launched into a totally off-the-cuff rant. And I just wanted to play it for viewers because I think it really captured the spirit of Ed.
Hillary Clinton will not talk tonight. She may talk tomorrow. But that's it from the Clinton campaign tonight. You get a big thank you from John Podesta for hanging in there, and he's reminding us that she's always been with us. This is unparalleled in American politics. Now, get this. This is the same campaign that was questioning Donald Trump as to how he would handle the outcome of the election. And Hillary Clinton is playing right into the narrative of Donald Trump. She's tired, low energy, going to bed. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. Her supporters are up, but she won't I think this is the epitome of arrogance in American politics. This is why she lost the election, if it turns out that way. It's this arrogance that it's hard to rally behind. That these people who have done so much for Hillary Clinton, they're left at the watershed tonight, inside the Javits Center in New York City. We'll see you tomorrow. We don't even know if we're going to be the president or not, but we'll see you tomorrow. And oh, by the way, she's been with you all along. I have never in my life seen anything like this. That is the mark of a quitter. I'm stunned. I'm more stunned about this tonight than anything else.
I think that clip really captures why people loved Ed. I think he spoke for so many people in that moment who were feeling frustrated. And obviously, in the lead up to the election, he was one of the few voices, Democratic Party voices, willing to say that, you know, maybe Bernie Sanders was the way the Democrats should have gone. Ashley, I want to start with you. What do you want viewers to know about your time working with Ed?
Well, besides what we've mentioned earlier, Ed was a great journalist. But besides that, he was a great man, and I think we can all agree to that when it comes to his character. I remember there was a time, it took place a couple of years ago, I was new to the station, and I was sent to cover protests in Charlotte, North Carolina, where unfortunately an African-American man was shot and killed by an officer. And I was new to the scene, new to journalism, and I had to do a report for Ed's 8 p.m. show. And I was given my report, and I was told by the producer, he was speaking in my ear saying, we're only going to ask you a couple of questions, and then the hit will be over. We have to move on to another guest. So I answer my 2 questions. They go on well. And then Ed throws me a curveball. He throws me a 3rd question. I'm like, okay, Ed, I'm just going to roll with it and see what comes out. That goes exceptionally well. He then sends me a message afterwards, and he's just like, you did a very great job with that. He said, I know I said we were only going to ask you a couple of questions, but I threw you a curveball because I knew you could answer it. I wanted you to know what you were capable of. I already knew you were capable of doing this, but I wanted you to see that.
Yeah, and that's what I said earlier about the fact that he really did make an effort to take all of us under his wing, too. Steve, Dan, you guys joined the reporter team more recently, but do you have anything that you want to share about your time with Ed?
I definitely do. I mean, Ed really, from the beginning, you know, day one, he welcomed me as a part of the team. He had a passion for sports, so he was excited that we were going to have a sports segment, and I was honored to be asked to be a part of that. And I remember one of the first weeks I was doing it, I went in after the first week to his office, and I said, hey, Ed, I'm sorry to bother you. You know, I was a little intimidated. He's a larger than life figure. And he said, no, come on in. He was very welcoming. And he said, what do you need? What do you need? And I said, you know, I just want to know if I'm doing everything okay. Is my writing okay? And he said, you're doing great, but here's some advice. And he got up and he started writing a golf highlight, a sample for me to have as a reference. And he said, you know, you're great. Just you don't need as many words to describe what's going on. He said, make every word count. And that was his advice. And I still have that piece of paper at my desk, and I reference it every day. And he just instilled that confidence in me. You know, for somebody being new in this business, him starting out as a sports broadcaster, really helped too.
Yeah, he certainly did. Dan, what would you like to add to our reflections on Ed?
Well, I think Ed was a man of integrity and principle, and he was open to alternative viewpoints. He wasn't afraid to be wrong, even. You know, when he would disagree with guests and different people, that was fine with him, and it was the mark of a real newsman, I think. I mean, I look back at one experience I had just in my first couple weeks here, where I saw him in the hallway, and Ed says, what do you got for me today, Dan? And I was like, well, I'm doing a report on how CNN is whitewashing Al-Qaeda in northern Syria to promote regime change. And he was like, all right, great. And, you know, this is not Ed's typical thing he goes after. So, you know, he had his faith in me, and he went with it. And, you know, I think we lost a larger-than-life figure today.
Definitely someone who was like a father to the office. I mean, the way he kind of looked out for all of us. And I know I have similar stories, Steve, about writing a script and turning it, and then him writing back with his own critique of it. Ashley Banks, Steve Christakos, Dan Cohen, thanks a lot. Ed Schultz was a passionate defender of American workers and strongly supported trade policies that work for all, not just large corporations. For many years, his voice has been strong, steady, and against forces of corporate greed. Ed was a friend of mine and will be sorely missed. Those are the words of Bernie Sanders, apparently, who tweeted that out just a few moments ago. Thank you so much for joining me tonight in remembering our friend Ed Schultz. May he rest in peace.
All right, sorry, there's a couple of issues with my stream. I think it's Zoom. I'll still go and play the videos. Most of it's just listening anyways. This next one I think is, let's see, single payer, or this was way back in 2011. This is a good one. It's 15.5 minutes. I think this is when he was back on MSNBC.
With us on the Ed Show tonight, this chart right here, I showed it to you last night. We'll start it out again tonight. This is everything you need to know about America. And I challenge any state representative or any senator of any state legislative body across America to come here and stand on this platform with me. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pay your way to New York City. All you have to do is contact our producers and say that you want to be on the Ed Show and you want to explain to me in front of our audience tonight how this graph is good for America. Because, folks, this is all factual stuff right here. Tell me how the wage earner in America, which is the blue line, and the productivity of the American worker is the green line, and the top income earners of America is the red line. Tell me how that is good for America. I want any Republican to explain how 30 years of wage stagnation and 80% improvement in productivity by workers and the ridiculous growth in income for the top 1% has made this country better. No Republican, I don't think, can do this. None of them ever talk about this. None of them ever bring it up and say, and this is where we want America to go. No Republicans have the guts to look at the American people in the eye and explain this chart is really good for everybody. Instead, they fill the airwaves with lies like this.
We can't tax the very people that we expect to reinvest in our economy and to create jobs.
It is just foreign to most people to think that we're going to address our problems by raising taxes on the very people we expect to jump back into the game to create jobs.
And we will never have real economic growth if we're going to raise taxes on those in America who create jobs.
See, now, you've heard all of those sound bites from the Republicans in Washington. So the reason why I'm making this offer tonight to a state representative or a state senator from any of the 50 great states of America is because I want something different. I want the Republicans to come up and give me something different. They want the White House, the Senate. They want the whole enchilada. They want everything. But they always come up with the same BS. So maybe if we got a state senator from the great state of Kentucky to come up here and to the state of New York to explain to all of us. Or maybe we can find somebody from West Virginia, a righty that might be able to explain how this is good for America. They can't do it. We have to go, I guess, into the heartland and we can find somebody. I'm serious about this. I personally will write the check for you or for a plane ticket, for hotel, and I'll even go to dinner with you, and I know you'll really be excited about that if you're righty. But folks, I'm not making this stuff up. This is where wage earners have been in this country for the last 30 years. This is what American workers have done in productivity in the last 30 years, an increase of 80%. And this is the red line. You ever wonder, is your kid going to be a red liner or a blue liner? If you're a working American and you believe in recycled Bush economic theory, no offense, but I think you need your head examined. The one percenters in the red line have hammered the Americans in the blue lines for 30 years. Republicans, I don't think they give a damn if you work 50, 60, or 70 hours a week to survive and pay the bills. Where have your bills gone in the last 30 years? We are living still, unfortunately, in the greediest generation in the history of this country. And these numbers right here prove it. The top 1% were, now think about this. If the top 1%, if they were the job creators, based on what this is right here, hell, we ought to have record employment, not record unemployment. You see, they've been lying to us for years about how the job creators are going to reinvest their tax dollars back into the economy. For Republicans, this red line, just remember one thing about the Republicans. This red line will never be high enough for them. In this blue line right here, the wage earners, they take their finger and they just put it right on top of them and they squish them. And that line right there, that'll never be low enough. That's their whole philosophy. All the money goes to the top, break up the unions, crap on the working folk of America, go after firefighters, go after teachers, go after nurses, go after your right to collectively bargain in the workplace, just butcher the entire economy, because as long as they've got this red line, and as long as that baby's going this way, they can have all the political influence in the world. That's what's wrong with this country. And that's why Washington is broken, because they cannot reverse this. At the same time, Democrats, I think, need to wake up and remember just who they're fighting for. There should be no negotiation with conservatives. This is undoubtedly an ideological war. What do you believe in? What do you believe in? Do you want to turn to your son and daughter as they go off to college someday and say, hey, look what you have to look forward to. You're a blue liner, and this is what you have to look forward to if you end up in the top 1%. This is where America is. This is income stagnation right here. And the tax policies we have in this country have led us this way for years. But you know what? They want more out of the workers. We have the most educated, trained force in America, don't we? And so we want to keep them down. Now, how do we fight? I love this piece of tape. I can't get enough of this guy. It's unfortunate that he left us way too early, because I think he would fight like this.
What is the price? We ask the other side. What is the price that you want from these working men and women? What cost? How much more do we have to give to the private sector and the business? How many $1 billion more are you asking? Are you requiring? When does the greed stop?
Ted Kennedy, 2007 on the Senate floor. Does it play tonight? Does it play in 2011? Does it play in 2012 and 13 and 14? You better believe it does, because he had a philosophy, and the Democrats used to have a philosophy that a rising tide lifts all boats. But now we're playing with all these graphs and all these lines, and if the charts don't go this way for the redliners, we're not a very good country anymore. And the Republicans aren't doing anything to turn the job market around. They are obstinate, they are obstructionists, and all they care about is defeating President Obama. When is the worm going to turn for the Democrats? President Obama and the Democrats need to show that kind of fire that you just saw from the 2007 tape of Senator Ted Kennedy. They need to call Republicans out daily on their greed. Because you know what? That graph isn't going to change. Those are facts. That's not theory. Those are numbers. If you were in business and your bean counter came into the office and said, boss, take a look at this. Look where we're going. Would you say, oh, you're making that up? No, that's real stuff. The American worker can't survive another 30 years or even another 30 seconds of Republican economic policy. Paul Ryan, you're the guru now. Why don't you come to New York and go face to face with me on this issue and give the blue liners an idea of what voucher care is going to be instead of Medicare. Chris Christie, here's another cultural Republican taking a chopper ride. Can you fly that sucker across the Hudson River and come on in here to the studio and talk to me? Because nobody else will ask you about this graph. Taking $5 grand out of the pockets of every employee and lining the pockets of the redliners in your state. You're right in lockstep with what the boys want you to do in Washington. And any one of the Republican 2012 candidates has an open invitation to stand here and talk about shared sacrifice and what it really means. None of them can do it. And we as liberals and we as independent voters, if you're in that arena, you have to realize that this is who they are. They're never going to change. Republicans are trying to scare us right now about the debt ceiling and unfunded mandates. And they basically are banking on the fact that you're stupid and not paying attention to what the hell's going on. Americans do care about having a job, filling their tank up, and giving their kids a better life than they had. If these lines keep heading in this direction, how in the world is the American dream going to be revitalized? We have in this country right now income disparity that we have never seen before, and that graph is all about income disparity. And I need one of these Republicans from any of the 50 states. If you're a state legislator, just contact our producers here at NBC for the Ed Show. We'll bring you in here. I need you to explain this graph to me. I'm selfish. I want to know. I'm sure the audience wants to know too, but I want to know. Because, you see, that graph has done nothing when it comes to disposable income. Nowhere on that blue line down at the bottom does it say that there's been an increase in disposable income for American families, and that's why our economy is thriving. No, it's not thriving. It's a little bit better than it was before President Obama took over. No question about that. We're headed in the right direction. But if you don't have disposable income, how's the economy going to turn around? And if we have these Wall Street barons and these in the financial sector sitting on $2 trillion worth of assets, and they're hanging on because they want to see President Obama lose the election because they're all about power, how are we going to turn this around? So get your cell phones out, because I have a very profound question for you tonight. If you're a parent, do you think your child will be a red liner or a blue liner? Text A for red, text B for blue. 622-639 is the number, and you can always go to our blog at ed.msnbc.com. We'll bring you the results later on in the show. Joining me now is Independent Senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders. Senator, great to have you with us tonight. Why aren't Democrats screaming about the income disparity? And here we are, hung up in hedgerow country, talking about a debt ceiling that doesn't mean a damn thing when it comes to jobs. Your thoughts, Senator?
Well, you're right. Some of us are screaming, and some of us have made the point that the United States now, Ed, has the most unequal distribution of wealth and income of any major country on earth. We're looking at the top 1% earning 22% of all income in America, more than the bottom 50%. And here's another fact, Ed, that you should put up there on your charts. And that is the top 400 wealthiest people in this country, own more wealth than the bottom half of America, about 150 million people. During a recent 25-year period, 80% of all income made in this country went to the top 1%.
Have the Republicans done anything to turn this around, in your opinion?
Oh, quite the contrary. What they have done is fought for huge tax breaks for the very wealthiest people in this country. What they have fought for, along, I have to say, with some Democrats, is a trade policy which allows large corporations to throw American workers out on the street, move to China, bring your products back into this country, which results in the decimation of our manufacturing sector. What the Republicans very clearly are doing is representing the very wealthiest people in this country, and they could care less about anybody else. Unfortunately, because of the nature of our campaign finance system, there are too many Democrats also hooked up to big money and are not standing up for working families or the middle class.
Now, when you look at the debt ceiling conversation that's going on, they want more cuts if they're going to agree to anything. And the cuts that they are attacking right now are on the blue liners. I mean, all of these wage earners in America who are being asked to do more by these Republican governors and give up more, they're all blue liners. Yet all the breaks are still going to the red liners.
The problem we have is the Republican proposal is so outrageous that literally people don't believe you when you tell them. They don't believe you when the Republicans when you tell them that the Republicans want to end Medicare as we now know it, shift the cost back onto senior citizens, give them an $8,000 check and say, go get a private insurance company to take care of your needs. Good idea. You may be lucky to stay in the hospital for 2 or 3 days. Slash Medicaid, slash education, slash nutrition, slash the Environmental Protection Agency, etc., etc. And by the way, as part of that proposal, despite the fact that the rich are getting richer while the middle class is going to collapse, you know what we're going to do, Ed? We're going to give another $1 trillion in tax breaks to the very wealthiest people in this country.
That's exactly what they want to do. They want to cut the corporate and they want to cut the personal income tax rate another 10%. And I said that in the commentary. The red line, it ain't high enough, and the blue line can never be low enough. And
there is no end to their greed, and if we don't begin to stand up and stop it in a very forceful way, there is not going to be a middle class left in this country.
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, great to have you with us again tonight here on The Ed Show. Thanks so much. Remember to answer tonight's question at the bottom of the screen. I want to know what you think. President Obama is set to announce a troop withdrawal from Afghanistan. Some are worried the withdrawal is too big. Others say it's not enough. We'll tell you what it might mean for the president's political future. And later, The Ed Show makes a major announcement on how we can all join in together and save American lives. Nicole Lamoureux from the National Association of Free Clinics will join us tonight. Stay with us. We're right back.
Again, that one was in 2011. He was one of the few who spoke with Bernie Sanders. No one else is on, so I will go ahead and play another one. This was in 2009. 2009. He's talking about single payer.
I want to start with a story tonight that I think deserves a heck of a lot more attention. Is single payer on the table or is it off the table? Healthcare professionals want to know. I want to know. Americans all over the country are asking the same question. Now, earlier this week, and I think this is a travesty, the Senate Finance Committee, chaired by Max Baucus, held a hearing on healthcare reform. All players were there at the table except advocates for single payer. Now, folks, I'm not talking about the Code Pink crowd. I'm talking about doctors, nurses, lawyers, professional people who want and live it and need real reform. Now, the key is they had no seat at the table. The word is excluded, and I want to know why. Insurance companies, HMOs, pharmaceutical companies, hey, they were there.
What kind of democracy is it when you pay to play? When you take millions from your people, you're not going to give money to your corporate donors and not provide health care to all? What kind of Senate is this? Is this the Blagojevich Senate? Are you the Blagojevich chairman? We need single payer on the table now.
Now, folks, I'm not a big protester, and I don't advocate going out and getting arrested. But I think this demonstrates the undercurrent in America when educated professional people stand up for their beliefs and are excluded. Now, let me explain single payer for just a minute. The money comes from one source, the government. Now, you and I pay taxes, okay? The government pays the bills. It's that simple. Patients are not caught in the middle between doctors and insurance companies. No game plan here. There's no middleman, you know? There's no decision makers between you and your doctor. It's a clean deal. So what Chairman Baucus has decided, this option cannot be part of the discussion at a Senate hearing. Now, I think that's wrong. I don't think it's fair. I think it's certainly not democracy at work. You know, and I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. These people, these professionals deserve to be heard. Now, we reached out to Senator Baucus's office today for a response, and here's what we got back. Senator Baucus said that he intends to craft a uniquely American solution that builds on the current system and includes both public and private coverage. Single-payer advocates were not, get that, folks, were not invited to testify to the Finance Committee roundtable, but were encouraged to submit a statement for the record. Senator Baucus said at the meeting that he respects everyone's views and wants to work with all the stakeholders to achieve meaningful reform this year. I have to ask the question tonight, President Obama, Do you support excluding people from discussion? This certainly doesn't sound like you, Mr. President. There's got to be a disconnect here somewhere between this committee and the White House. And I want to know more. Now, one of the people who was protesting at the hearing, and certainly was a doctor, she's a pediatrician who was educated at Georgetown University, University of Maryland, and Johns Hopkins. Do these professionals deserve not to be heard? Joining me now is Dr. Margaret Flowers. She's with the Physicians for a National Health Program. Dr. Flowers, thanks for being here tonight. You know this is my issue, and obviously it is yours. Tell our audience tonight what happened at this meeting, at this hearing.
Well, thank you, Ed, and thank you for having me on the show. So we knew that this roundtable discussion was coming up, and in days before the roundtable, we had people calling in to Senator Baucus's office asking to include somebody who represented single payer. And on Monday, the day before the event, we heard that the invitations were finished, that we wouldn't be invited. And so we went down there, 8 of us, all health advocates, all knowledgeable about single payer, and we went to the round table, and as it began, one of our members of our group stood up and said, "We're here, we'd like to have a seat at the table. Will you give us a seat at the table?" And he was arrested.
Okay, now I want to be very clear here, Dr. Flowers. Did you communicate with the Senate Finance Committee and tell them that you represent a lot of people and you've got a big organization and you want to be heard? Did you ask to be invited to this?
We did. Yes, and we even had a specific ask, a specific person that we would like to have had included.
And what was the response?
They said there would be no more invitations, that nobody else could have a seat.
Okay, now do you think it was just no more invitations, they didn't have enough room, or do you think they just didn't want to hear from single payer?
No, they don't. They just don't want to hear from single payer. I mean, we've been trying for months now, meeting with members of Congress to be included in the hearings and the events that they're holding, and they keep excluding us from it.
Do you think the majority of Americans want single payer, and can you quote any surveys or any numbers tonight?
Sure. Well, there have been a number of independent polls that have been done by CBS, the New York Times, Yahoo. They all show consistently that over 60% of Americans would like a national health system based on single payer, and the same for physicians. We know that around 60% of physicians nationwide want a national health program.
Okay. Now, folks, I want our audience to grab this. The majority of Americans, by a number of polls out there, Americans want single payer, yet the first health care reform meeting that's held by Senator Baucus, the Finance Committee, you're excluded. How many people do you represent? How many in your organization? How many are behind you?
Right. Well, the Physicians for a National Health Program has over 16,000 members nationwide, but we're part of a larger group called the Leadership Conference for Guaranteed Health Care, which represents over 20 million people nationwide.
20 million people, I guess you could say, excluded. Now, the question comes up, now 16,000 healthcare providers, that's really a fraction, but what about healthcare providers in totality in America? Are there any surveys there that say they want single payer?
The last one we had done was 2 years ago, and that was actually using the American Medical Association database, which tends to be a fairly conservative group. And 59% of those physicians surveyed wanted a national health program. If you look at pediatricians and other general primary care providers, it's more in the 70s and up to the 80s.
Okay, now you're a pediatrician, and I understand that you've given up your practice for the last 2 years to advocate for this. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, what's the next step? Are there any more hearings coming up that you know of?
Thank you. Yes, there's another hearing on Tuesday, May 12th, and we would like Senator Baucus to invite Dr. Marcia Angel to be able to speak at that roundtable discussion.
Okay, so you're just asking for one person at the table, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and the insurance industry was there, and the HMOs were there, business interest was there, but let's be clear here, single payer folks were not allowed, right?
Right. There were 15 people at that table.
Thank you, Dr. Flowers. Keep up the fight. Let me turn now to Michigan Senator Debbie Stabenow, who sits on the Senate Finance Committee and was there that day when these folks were escorted out. Senator, Americans want to know, how did this happen?
Well, Ed, first of all, I want to thank Dr. Flowers for her advocacy and everybody who is speaking out for a single-payer healthcare system. I'm not familiar with how things were put together that day, but I can tell you that I'm meeting with people who care about this issue passionately, want us to consider and look seriously at a single-payer system, and I know that other members of the Senate are doing that as well. I mean, I want to get insurance company bureaucrats out from the middle between patients and doctors. But I do want to also caution something else, Ed, which is part of what this whole process is about. While folks will say, yes, we want national health insurance, and I want that. I believe health care is a right, not a privilege. But we also have folks that say, you know, I want to be able to keep my health care that I have now. And most people get their health care through their employer.
Okay.
So we're trying to figure out, you know, in my state, a lot of folks get it through their employer and would like to keep it. So we're trying to figure all that out.
All right. Well, Senator, if you've got the majority of Americans that want single payer and they're not included at the first health care reform meeting, there's something wrong with this picture. Not to mention, it doesn't go on record to the American people, these folks who want to testify and say it's actually cheaper if we go down this road. But the pictures we have now are these people being escorted out. Some of them were arrested. What impression does that leave with the American people when stuff like this happens? Oh, here comes the single payer psycho crowd. Wait a second. In fairness, can you get Senator Baucus to change his mind on this and make sure they're included in the next few meetings?
Well, first of all, the situation at Finance, I think everybody felt was extremely unfortunate. I felt very bad about the dynamic about all of that. Absolutely, people need to be involved. There are a lot of presentations, a lot of meetings coming up. And I think what is most important is that we keep focused on the fact that we've got to have a healthcare system where everybody can get health care, where everybody can afford to do it. And you just if you'll keep pushing, everybody.
Okay, that one was in 2009 with Dr. Margaret Flowers. She ran for the Senate in 2016 as a member of the Green Party. And I think she's going to still run for Senate in 2020. We'll see. But yeah, interesting that back in 2009, Ed Schultz was even talking to Dr. Flowers. I'm going to do another one as far as why he left MSNBC. And let's see if I can find it in my history. Here we go.
In case you hadn't heard, MSNBC has made it official. They have canceled the Ed Show, and I will no longer be hosting the Ed Show or any show on MSNBC. I'm going to miss it, no question about it. I was informed of this on July 16th by the man who hired me, Phil Griffin, and I'm grateful for that. He told me that MSNBC in the 5 o'clock hour Eastern time was going to go in a different direction, and I was no longer in their future plans, and thanked me for the work I did on the network. And I certainly appreciate it. Phil hired me over 6 years ago. I did everything they asked me to do. I enjoyed it. It was quite a life experience. But in business and in broadcast and in cable, things change. Directions change, and it affects people's lives and careers. And I want you to know that I'm very appreciative of the opportunity that was afforded me. And it was quite a life experience, no doubt. I will move on to do other things on different platforms. I hope you'll follow my work here at WeGotEd.com. I'm planning on being in this election cycle in a big way, covering stories all over the country, and Wisconsin and Ohio and Florida, and bringing you a lot of content on this website. And no doubt I'm going to miss it, but I understand it, and things happen, and with change comes opportunity. With opportunity comes a challenge, and I'm up to the challenge to do something different, and who knows where I may end up. But I won't be on MSNBC, and I'm going to miss MSNBC, no doubt. I'm a big fan. They're great people, great professionals, and they just want to do something different at 5 o'clock. I accept that. To the viewers of the Ed Show, I want you to know that this was never about me. It was about you. And I tried to focus on things that were important to American families and American workers and the issues that were pertinent of our time. And I feel comfortable about the fact that I know in my heart I'm the same guy walking out the door that walked in some 6+ years ago. And I hope that you'll follow my work at WeGotEd.com. To the staff, they've been absolutely outstanding. The hardworking young professionals that have got great careers ahead of them. And some of them have been with me since the day I walked in the door, and they've been very loyal, and I consider them friends. I didn't want to say anything on the air because it's never been about me. I thought I'd choose this venue to say my goodbyes. I don't like long goodbyes anyway. And by the time you're watching this, I'm already in Canada catching fish and probably having a cocktail, thinking about what my future is going to be like. And it will be bright. We'll do a lot of things on this website. I'll have a lot of commentary and a lot of coverage. So I'll be okay. I don't want anybody feeling sorry for me. I've had a good run. I've had a lot of fun. And there have been a lot of challenges along the way that I think I have met with character. Thanks for watching. And hope you join me here at WeGotEd.com.
Now, yeah, I was talking to Harold Hedge. You know, he's being pretty gracious. I think if you wanted to see why exactly he probably left MSNBC, it's because of him wanting to cover Bernie Sanders' run for the presidency, and MSNBC's higher ups saying no. I think we can watch it. It's through somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, and also, you can actually see the one-on-one, and I think that's the one where they suppressed it. Anyways, I'll show the Humanist Report one, then I'll show the one-on-one with Bernie.
Wow, that's a lot of nobodies. Newsflash, not all.
Ed Schultz is a former MSNBC host who was one of the few standouts on the network who actually did their job and spoke truth to power. For example, he was, I believe, the only host on the network at the time that challenged Obama when he was pushing for the TPP. Additionally, he was one of the few hosts that wanted to actually cover Bernie Sanders' campaign. And presumably, since he wouldn't acquiesce to what the network clearly wanted, well, he was fired. And now, several years later, he's confirming what we suspected about MSNBC, that they have a very clear set of requirements with regard to what they expect from their hosts. Now, what he's saying is really a bombshell. So first and foremost, he clears up some misconceptions about RT, the network he's currently employed with. He states that this is his favorite job ever, and he has complete journalistic freedom to express himself there. Whereas with MSNBC, that wasn't necessarily the case. In fact, the president of MSNBC, Phil Griffin, often tried to control the content of their hosts.
And I want to make this very clear, and I hope your audience consumes this. There was more oversight and more direction given to me on content at MSNBC than there ever has been here at RT. And I think that it's very sad that that story is not getting out. I think it's many times I was told what to lead with on MSNBC. Many times I was told what I was not going to do, and I've got a story that, had I not been involved in it, I would have never believed it. And Phil Griffin, who I consider a friend to this day, was a watchdog, far more than anything I am exposed to here at RT America.
Did he tell you what to say? Did he tell you an angle to take?
Often.
So even though this really isn't too surprising, I find it fascinating because Phil Griffin, president of MSNBC, he controls content or the content of hosts often, but yet anyone in the mainstream media, CNN, MSNBC, they'll maintain that RT, since it receives funding from the Kremlin, is a propaganda network. But here you have a credible former MSNBC host confirming that it's actually RT that gives their hosts more intellectual freedom. Now he has a really explicit example as to how the president of MSNBC tried to keep their hosts on a leash. Now he talks about the launch of Bernie Sanders' 2016 presidential campaign and what happened when he tried to cover Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign.
When Bernie Sanders was announcing that he was going to be a candidate for the nomination of the Democratic Party in Burlington, Vermont, I was the only cable host between Fox, MSNBC, and CNN that was there live to cover it. Now, there were live cameras there, but we had coordinated with the Sanders campaign that at 5 o'clock he was going to make his announcement, and we were going to cover this on the Ed Show. I go to Bernie Sanders' house that afternoon, an interview in the backyard, about a 15-minute interview. The grandkids are running around. It's a big day for the Sanders family. He's going to announce that he's running for president. We're going to carry it live later on in the day, and we're going to run this one-on-one tape with Bernie. 3,000 people are there on Lake Champlain. It's 5 minutes to air, and I get a phone call from Phil Griffin, "You're not covering this." I said, "Phil, Bernie Sanders is announcing he's running for president. He's going to be a president. I don't care. You're not covering this." And it got rather contentious. And
Why though?
I don't, well, now you're asking me for opinion. I'm giving you fact right now about what happened. Mm-hmm. And other people who were there with me will attest to the fact and back me up that this is what happened. We were told that we had to cover something down in Texas that was totally meaningless, and another press conference in Baltimore, which was already had been in the news for a few days. We're covering Bernie Sanders live. We're coordinated with his campaign. And I'm told 5 minutes before, you're not covering Bernie Sanders. Now, let me give you the opinion. I think the Clintons were connected to Andy Lack, connected at the hip. I think that they didn't want anybody in their prime time or anywhere in their lineup supporting Bernie Sanders. I think that they were in the tank for Hillary Clinton, and I think it was managed, and 45 days later I was out at MSNBC. And I thought it stunk. They gave me my contract. I signed a non-disclosure agreement and also a no bad-mouthing agreement, which I felt good with, because I thought that this was over time all going to wash out, and I knew if Bernie Sanders didn't win, he was going to run again, because the man is determined. So I was patient and took my money and went on, but the fact of the matter is I think I've got a hell of a story to tell. And when you see how the campaign unfolded, Donna Brazile feeding Hillary Clinton questions at the campaign, the DNC undercutting Bernie Sanders, the superdelegates that were organized by Hillary Clinton. I mean, in my state of Minnesota, where I'm a resident and pay taxes, Al Franken and Amy Klobuchar were superdelegates, and despite the fact that Bernie Sanders won Minnesota, they supported Clinton. It was the fix was in. The fix was in with the mainstream media. The fix was in with managing the news and shutting down Bernie Sanders. And it wasn't until he started matching the Clintons and raising money that he became, well, we got to cover this guy. But from the start, the Clintons didn't want any competition. They didn't want Bernie Sanders around. They didn't want the Keystone XL pipeline. They didn't want to push her on that issue. They didn't want to push her on free education for all, and they certainly didn't want to push her on the TPP and also universal health care. Those were four main issues that Bernie Sanders, had he not been in the campaign, Hillary Clinton would have never had to address. And so I think the fix was in early on to Deep Six Bernie. To this day, it kind of pisses me off because they talk about collusion. There's nothing more than collusion than this.
And that.
So I just created this dope website with Wix. Let me show you how I did it. First up, go to
That's what progressives have been saying from the very beginning. There's your collusion right there. Hillary Clinton's campaign colluding with media executives to suppress information about Bernie Sanders' campaign. Now, we don't necessarily have evidence that Phil Griffin and Hillary Clinton were colluding specifically to silence Ed Schultz here, but we do know that Phil Griffin, his name did come up a couple of times in John Podesta's emails when they were released by WikiLeaks. So certainly, it's the case that there was very much a blackout of Bernie Sanders' campaign. And when we talked about this blackout of Bernie Sanders coverage in 2016, we were called conspiracy theorists. And here we have now a former credible MSNBC host confirming what was obvious. Yes, there was very much a blackout. Now, if you don't trust Ed Schultz, well, there's another credible former MSNBC host that has a similar story about how MSNBC tries to do propaganda on behalf of the establishment, because back in 2011, when Cenk Uygur of TYT left MSNBC, he talked about a very interesting meeting he had with the president of MSNBC.
I got pulled in and they told me, hey, listen, we were just, or it was actually one specific person, the head of MSNBC. He said, I was just in Washington, and people in Washington tell me that they're concerned about your tone. I was like, whoa, what? You know, despite all the things that I've said about the mainstream media, I still viewed that as kind of like theoretical. Like, a real person, are they really going to say that? I was like, and I'm naively thinking, what does he mean? Did he talk to his friend Bob in Washington? Why would you say people in Washington if you meant, oh yeah, I was talking to my buddy down at the shop about you. It just happened to be that he was a person in Washington. You wouldn't frame it that way, right? But I'm still thinking that. And then he gives me the second part of the speech. Hey, listen, Cenk, outsiders are cool. And they wear, I think he might have said something like, they wear leather jackets, they ride bikes. I think I'm an outsider, I don't ride bike, but I have a terrible leather jacket. Anyway, he said, I'd love to be an outsider, outsiders are cool, but we're not. We're insiders. We are the establishment. And I just kind of sat back. I was like, wow, this is it. This is the speech. So he said, look, you got to tone it down. And then he had me talk to one of their top contributors who explained, hey, listen, just take it easy. You know, you're a little tough on the guests and, you know, tone issues, and let's have more Republicans on, which was an interesting thing.
Now, let me remind you that the media is supposed to challenge the power establishment in Washington, D.C., but here you have Phil Griffin, the president of the so-called liberal news network, telling Cenk that they are the establishment. They are the power core in the United States of America. So when you hear about this liberal media myth, there's no such thing as liberal media. All we have is establishment media that does the bidding of the Democratic Party. That's what MSNBC is. They are the propaganda wing of the Democratic Party, in the same way that Fox News is the propaganda arm of the Republican Party. But just because MSNBC is brazenly, I think, doing the bidding of the Democratic Party establishment, that doesn't make them liberal, because to suggest that means that the Democratic Party establishment itself is liberal, when they're not liberal. They're very much conservative, centrist at best, and the best that we get out of some Democrats is that they're center-left. So this is why the Overton window in the country has shifted so far to the right. It's because the mainstream media, they're not doing their job. They are doing everything in their power to suppress actual progressives. Ed Schultz was chewed out by the president of what's supposed to be the left-leaning network when he tried to cover the launch of Bernie Sanders' campaign. How absurd is that? Is this surprising news? Absolutely not. But it's certainly a bombshell, and I hope that we'll get a response from MSNBC, but certainly I don't think they really care, because so long as they appease their corporate advertisers, which happen to be the same donors who are giving to the Democratic Party, then that's all that they care about. So yeah, mainstream media, it's all about propping up the establishment and the status quo. Not surprising, but certainly when we hear about the specifics, the situation is a lot worse than I think a lot of us previously thought.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com.
You're running for president. You're running for president in a system that you despise. Citizens United, the big money, you make no bones about that. What's the roadmap? Give me a roadmap. How's this going to work?
Well, let me tell you this. The reason I'm running, you see that kid's house over there and all these little toys for the kids? I got 7 grandchildren. And I want America to be a country in which they can flourish, in which they can enjoy, in which they can do well. I want America to lead the world in making that happen in other countries. And that's not happening right now. We have a political system right now, especially since Citizens United, which is dominated by a handful of billionaires who can now contribute, in the case of the Koch brothers, more money into the political process than either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. Can you imagine that? One family spending more money than either major party.
You think Americans get that? Do you think they're concerned about it?
I think they're increasingly concerned about it when they see never-ending, ugly, negative ads paid by organizations they know nothing about. And I think what this is about, frankly, is if we don't turn this around, we're looking not at a democratic form of society. And in Vermont, we're proud if we have one person, one vote at our town meeting. You're looking at an oligarchic form of society where billionaires control not only the economy, but the political process as well. And that we cannot allow to happen.
Okay. You running for president was never the career plan, was it?
I think that's an understatement.
Was it? I mean, so this is somewhat of a internal grassroots feeling of your own. I mean, you've kind of evolved into wanting to do this, right?
Look, Ed, you're talking to a guy who ran for statewide office in the early 1970s and received 1% of the vote. Okay. And last time I ran for the Senate, I got 71% of the vote. And I am very proud and happy to be Vermont's United States Senator. But I look around what's going on in this country, and I see the enormous problems that people are facing, the disappearing middle class, 45 million people living in poverty, the only country without a national health care program, growing gap between the very rich and everybody else, Citizens United. Somebody has got to stand up and say, no, that is not what this country is about. We got to bring millions of people together, create a movement, and say to the billionaire class, sorry, you can't have it all.
You're not going to take any PAC money?
I'm not going to have a super PAC. We have gotten money over the years from unions, from environmental groups, and I welcome that. I will take money from those PACs that agree with my philosophy, but we're not going to have to come up some kind of secret super PAC, which is going to be funded by billionaires, that's for sure.
Okay, so this is as pure as it gets in modern day politics.
Yeah.
Is that a fair estimation? I mean, you've never run a negative ad, have you?
No, I've never run a negative ad in my life. We intend to be raising, and we are raising, millions and millions of dollars. For most people, that is a lot of money. But we're running against folks who are going to raise, maybe $1 billion, maybe $2 billion. Huge sums of money from people that are contributing in secret without any disclosure. That is the reality of American politics today. So, yeah.
So you think there's a roadmap to win in Iowa with that deck stacked against you?
I do. And here's the point. And one of the hesitancies I've had, and you and I have talked about this on your show. You know, I was reluctant to jump into this race. Why? For a couple of reasons. One of them was, could we raise enough money to run a credible and winning campaign? I'm not talking about raising $1 billion, but enough money to get the message out to people, to organize people. And the answer is, I believe that we can do that. We've been in this race a couple of weeks. We have something like 120,000 individual contributors. Going to BernieSanders.com. You know what the average contribution is? $40. How's that? $40. So if millions of people say, yeah, we want fundamental change in our economics and our politics, contribute, we'll have enough money, not to outspend these guys, but to get the message out and do the organization.
So you've never run a negative campaign.
I know, this shocks you. I've never run a negative ad in my life.
But I think that there's a sense of purity there that is rather bold. That's not what the American people are used to seeing.
All right, let me tell you a story. You want a story?
Yeah, I do. Okay. I love stories.
I run in campaigns where really a lot of ugly stuff was thrown at me, lies, usual stuff. And we would sit around at meetings, and my big tough guys would say, Bernie, you got to respond. You got to beat up these guys. Yeah. And all the women would sit there and say, well, no, I don't think that's what the people of Vermont want. Guess who was right? The women of Vermont were right. My wife was right. People who said, it doesn't work. people want to hear you discuss your ideas for the future. They don't want you to be, character assassinating other people. And so it's not just that I'm, a pure human being. It's in my state of Vermont, it doesn't work. And you know what? I think increasingly around the country, people are sick and tired of this crap.
So you think that crosses the border to the other 49 states?
I really do. I really do. I think people are in trouble. They want to hear what our ideas are to improve this country. And they don't believe that every candidate is an awful, horrible person and needs to be, assassinated with 30-second political ads.
What do you do on national security? We're in a heck of a mess right now on what to do with ISIS. What would Bernie Sanders as president do?
Okay. I don't think anybody thinks there's any easy or magical answer to it. Number one, obviously, the function of any president is to defend this country as best he or she can. And obviously, I would do that. But this is what I will tell you, Ed. I voted against the war in Iraq, and I think history will record that as the right vote. What I believe in my heart of hearts is the United States alone cannot win the war against ISIS. We can't do it. The Muslim nations in that world, Saudi Arabia has the third largest military budget in the world. They're going to have to step up to the plate. This is a fight for the soul of Islam, and the countries there that are opposed to the ideology, the barbaric ideology of ISIS, are going to have to lead the effort. We have got to play a supportive role. Other countries, Western countries around the world, have got to play a supporting role. But the United States alone cannot win that war. And I worry very much that a number of my Republican colleagues want perpetual warfare for whatever reason in the Middle East, and I strongly oppose that.
Would you continue the Obama strategy as it is right now as far as drone strikes and surgical type strikes on terrorist groups?
I think the president, under very, very difficult circumstances, is trying to do the right thing. And what he is saying is he does not want combat troops in Iraq and Syria, and I agree with him wholeheartedly on that. So I think the idea of special forces, of surgical strikes, is in fact the right thing to do. But once again, we need a coalition to take on ISIS. It cannot just be the United States.
So what about ground troops? That rhetoric is out there now. They're trying to outdo one another on Iraq, it seems like, the other party. I mean, is there ever a scenario where you would commit ground troops into the Middle East?
Well, ever is a very big word. But I, as I said, voted against the war in Iraq, and I will do everything I can to prevent that from happening. I mean, you send ground troops in, they get killed, more troops come in, you're into another Vietnam syndrome, you're into perpetual warfare there.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, a number of my Republican colleagues are trying to outdo each other, show how tough they are. I heard that rhetoric back in the lead up to the war in Iraq, and that was a disaster. So this is tough stuff. I don't have a magical solution. Frankly, nobody does.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to have to be a coalition led by the Muslim nations themselves with our support.
All right. Looking at what you have advocated for and what you have fought for. In fact, the gentleman that picked us up at the airport today, I asked him about Bernie Sanders. He said, well, he's an unspoiled guy. I mean, he says that you have fought for the veterans, that you've always cared about the downtrodden, you've always worked to help the poor, you believe in the basics when it comes to everybody getting an education. How do you run a presidency like that with so much obstruction that has taken place on the very fundamental things that you've advocated for? Even veterans, how hard you've had to work with the vets?
Look, I have been criticized for being too boring and too repetitious, because the views that I hold today are the views that I held 30 years ago. And people go back and they quote me, and it's pretty much the same thing. I believe in a nation in which everybody gets a fair shot, in which we don't have massive income and wealth inequality, in which, and I did this as chairman of the Veterans Committee, when people come home wounded in body and spirit, we are going to take care of them. That is a major priority, no compromises on that issue. I believe in a country where if people work 40 hours a week, they should not live in poverty, which is why we got to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I grew up in a family that did not have a lot of money. I know what economic struggle is about. And yes, if people want to criticizing me for standing up for the working class and the middle class of this country, and somebody who has for 30 years taken on the wealthiest people in America and virtually every special interest, fine. You want to criticize me for that? I accept that criticism. That's who I am. That's what I do.
Again, I'm sorry for the streaming quality. I don't know if it's going to keep up that way or if it's going to fix itself. But anyway, if anyone wants to come in and share your videos of Ed Schultz or something that you remembered hearing or watching from Ed. I mean, I really didn't watch too much of his stuff, either on MSNBC or his podcast or his on RT. Although it does make me think, I mean, he was pretty much, I mean, if you're going to be a politician, you're going to need someone within media, within some influence to get you going. And Ed Schultz was one of them, or at least he tried. And the Young Turks were the other one. Unfortunately, we all know about Young Turks. But yeah, it's you're gonna need someone in media to help you actually get elected, because the media is the arm of leverage to the public, and public won't know anything without media. That's why independent media needs to take off, and truly independent media, that way there's no controlled opposition. But I don't think that's gonna ever happen. Repeal of net neutrality, they'll just slow down. You've got platforms like YouTube, Periscope, where you've got a lot of good stuff incorporated into the platform, but of course you got algorithms making sure that no one's gonna find you. I mean, on DLive of all places, and I'm sure my quality is poor, but DLive actually shows a lot more people watching this show than YouTube. I mean, there's really no reason for me to stay on YouTube except for people like to chat. On Steemit and DLive, and nobody really likes to chat. So, remember, if you guys go there, I mean, eventually we're probably gonna have to go there. I'm gonna have to go there at least. But and Zoom is acting up, as you can see. When I was sharing the videos, it was slow, not just on my main PC, but also on my DLive stream. So we know that it's not DLive, it's not Steemit, or it's not DLive, it's not YouTube slowing down the video, it's Zoom, and why, I don't know. So that's kind of it. I mean, if nobody wants to come in, I know it's an early night, it's like 9:30. I thought it was Friday, not Thursday. So this whole day's gotten really weird because of the flooding. Let's see. Yeah, so the arm. So just like Teddy Roosevelt, how he did it. He had someone who had a newspaper company, media company. He had someone within politics themselves. So he had, not only did he have ambitions to become a politician, not only just a normal politician, president, he had someone from the media who could tell the public that, hey, that was him, and someone who would vouch for him that's within politics already, and you've already got most people swinging your way with their vote. Not that votes matter anyway, we all know that now. But yeah, so I don't see Bernie Sanders running like he did in 2016. If he's going to run in 2020, he'll be in DNC. He'll be on your typical MSNBC, CNN, ABC, whatever, CBS, all those mainstream areas. Probably TYT will cover him too, same way. But if Hillary Clinton's running, move over, Bernie. Oof, I got spiders and spider webs everywhere. Anyways, yeah, I like Ed Schultz's stuff. I like listening to him. Pretty much seems to be telling the truth at all times. He definitely had his opinions, definitely mostly progressive. And, you know, all the people who were talking about, I would say conservatives, that will never ever support progressivism, either because of It's just a term that's now used as centralists or neoliberals, whatever. Also, the conspiracy theories that eventually we want progressivism, socialism, or communism is another alternative term for it, as a new world order, one world government. But you gotta think about the actions, the behavior, the strategy, because progressivism, to make things actually better, progress forward rather than regress backward, I guess, has never been supported. It's never going to be supported by conservatives. It's never going to be supported by neoliberals, or won't be supported by libertarians. So it's very low number of people who actually want that, and we've actually stemmed away from progressivism. Look, I'm an independent. I'm just stating a case here, if you didn't notice, but progressivism has been dwindling and dying down over the decades. Has it gotten better or has it gotten worse since then? That's for you to decide. So are we heading towards going back there? I mean, if it was great way back then when they wanted a new world order, why would they want to make it not so popular anymore? Why would they make it worse? So you gotta think, maybe I've been lied to, maybe controlled opposition. But yeah, progressivism also changed. They may tout it as something else these days. Like everything has been subverted, even our words, even what we would call ourselves, or anyone, even independent, me as an independent, that's also been subverted. But whatever, that's just the way things are. That garden gnome. Oh yeah, okay, maybe I'll wait for garden gnome. I don't know how much I could talk. I'd pretty much be a horrible showrunner because I hate talking to myself. I know I'm talking to you, but it's only a one-way conversation. Imagine calling someone on the phone and you can hear them, so all you could do is just talk, and you can't really have a conversation, right? You can't have a debate. You can't have just a normal, typical conversation back and forth. You can't share ideas. That's why I prefer this. That's why you probably prefer this. You're watching this rather than something else, and Gardenump's gonna give me seizures with that. It's not gonna work, Gardenup. Wait, vote for Jank Uger, you said? Your little mini cam is all...
You don't like that?
No. That's gonna give people epilepsy, dude. I'm gonna have to give them...
I've been playing with all kinds of different settings. Yeah. Give me a minute, man, and I'll chat with you about a couple of those topics.
I think that flashy video is telling me to donate to TYT and Wolfpack.
It is.
Wow, that's some crazy, powerful stuff there. Yeah, anyways.
I'll be right back.
Sure. One of the things that I like going down the rabbit holes, but I think that's all I always wonder if those rabbit holes were just made for people to find stuff. I'm kind of in the same boat that there's this guy, Max Egan. I'm not sure if he's controlled opposition or not. I haven't made up my mind, because here's the thing: someone that's in control, you know, so the minions of those in control might actually spread rumors of people who are not controlled opposition saying they are controlled opposition. It just fucks with your mind. So I gotta watch more of Max Egan's videos. I might do a showcase on Max Egan, Maxiga, and he's got some things that I agree with. So far, some things I don't, because of his symbolism and his stuff he wears and all this other stuff. Because you know where I am with that.
Yeah, dude, it's a shame about Ed Schultz. Like you, I probably haven't watched as much Ed Schultz as a lot of people have.
I'm stopping your video for a second. It's giving me a headache.
Okay, I'll fucking change it. Jesus Christ.
Come on, man. At least show like poop coming out of a
I
woman's
put the
ass or
wolf pack
something.
up like a couple of days ago on Ryan's channel, I think.
It's not that. It's bothersome. Well, it is bothersome. It's just annoying.
Wonder why it's doing that. Like I'm trying to turn that blinking setting off, but it doesn't want to turn off.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, like I'll fix it while we're chatting here.
Sure.
But yeah, like you, I hadn't watched a whole lot of Ed Schultz simply because I'm familiar with his work.
Yep.
But he was on MSNBC, and it's not like I spend fucking hours watching that garbage.
But I mean, I was watching MSNBC before 2016 and leading up to it. I mean, I wasn't like a frequent viewer, but if I had to choose back then, I think it was MSNBC more than CNN or Fox that I watched. I mean, mostly I felt like I got most of my news with The Daily Show, when it was Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert before he sold out. So that was like the extent of my news before 2016. Then 2016 came, and I was watching MSNBC, and I was like, "What's up with these guys?" And then that's how I started. I was going, there's got to be better news coverage than these guys. So I looked online, and that's where I found TYT. And unfortunately, TYT is not what it was after Bernie Sanders' 2016 run. So, and then of course, you know where I went with that. More indie media. Now, no indie media. Now I'm going down rabbit holes instead. There we go. That's my journey. And
I don't know. I've been following news like since I was pretty young, right? And politics since I was pretty young. It was following this stuff before I got out of high school.
Yeah.
So I've gone through a lot of these different outlets. Like for a long time, I'd watched Democracy Now! Like almost religiously, like in the late 90s and early 2000s. We're just talking about major media outlets here. I ended up in a lot of my stuff came from reading and not just media. So I ended up reading a bunch of like Noam Chomsky. I ended up reading about the history of anarchism and socialism in America. And I studied a lot into that. And then after that, like I kind of went a little bit more almost rightward in some ways. Like I became like more pro-gun rights. Like this was in the, maybe around 2007 or 2008. I became more pro-gun rights.
Was there a reason for it?
Well, I just woke up to the fact that guns in America are like a force of nature. There's no getting rid of them. All right? And there's enough of people in the country that want to have things like, a semi-automatic rifle and all this stuff. That their opinion, we live in a fucking democracy. Their opinion counts. Like, I know it's more dangerous to live in a free society. And things can get crazy sometimes, but I'm sorry, that's the price you have to pay.
I mean, with it comes a lot of responsibilities. And here's the thing. I was driving out through middle of nowhere. I'm in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska. But I actually went to middle of nowhere, South Dakota, and the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, where you've got populations with under 100 people, where we stayed out for 2 days, 2 nights. Yeah, there's even like homes with the Confederate flag up there. Like, it doesn't really bother me. I mean, it's just if I thought I was like a minority in Columbus, I was like the only Asian guy over in Wyoming.
That might be true.
Yeah, but I felt safe. I felt okay, just because everyone just minds their own business. No one goes up to you and says, "Hey, you're not allowed here," or whatever. It's like they don't know if I have a gun. I don't know if they have a gun. Whatever. But it's like, it's not bothering me, I'm not gonna bother him. You know, it's that kind of mentality. It feels like. So,
well, you know, it's people are less. You know, and this is easy for me to say as a white dude. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people are a lot less fucking racist and shit than popular culture gives them credit for.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't give a shit, man. You might get a look, but I've got red hair. Like, I get those kind of looks too sometimes because people are just curious. They're like, oh, that's unusual. But they don't hold it against you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, granted, having red hair is like a very low level version of that, you know, but you get it.
Yeah.
Like, people are just curious. They don't fucking mean anything if they give you like an odd look sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And it's not like they're not nice, at least, you know, if they do talk, it's not like they're saying, hey, what are you doing here? Actually, I actually get more of that from the Hispanics. It's just funny.
Really?
Like, are you North Korean? Or they'll mistake me for a Mexican, and you know, but it's not like mean. It's just more curiosity, like you're saying.
That's what a lot of it is, and a lot of people like will be maybe a little bit friendlier to you than they would be to like me, because it just in an interaction. Because I'm just some fucking dude, when you're like the only Asian dude they've seen in 10 years or some shit. You know,
yeah, or their entire
I've
life.
seen that kind of stuff. Yeah, or their entire life. Yeah. So I've seen that happen before too. Like, man, it's the media that's stoking up a lot of this racism. People are giving less of a shit as the years go on. Yeah. Like, if media wouldn't stoke them up, they would give a shit even less.
Yeah. Hey, Shirley. Shirley wants me to play a Dylan Ratigan rant. I guess a lot of people left MSNBC. You would know, Shirley, because you watch your husband watching mainstream media. And Ryan says Australia hates redheads.
In the UK, there was a group of some kind of coalition of fucking gingers that like got together and they were like, we're being discriminated against. And they tried to get protected status.
Really?
Like a minority, yeah.
Why? What's up with that?
Well, a lot of people that had red hair and shit came over from Ireland to the UK. Or they come from Wales. So those are the lower classes of like old British society.
Oh.
So
you're the scum of the earth, huh?
Yep, like Welsh were the first people to be crushed by the British. And I'm good portion Welsh.
Yeah. My wife's a redhead, so maybe I never even thought about that with redheads. I thought they were like I don't know. I thought gingers were in the in, you know, that redheaded rarity that they're saying, that there's gonna be less and less redheads out there. And I remember reading that in like the news way back, and
yeah, it's just you know, people look for reasons to split themselves up, man.
Yeah, I guess so.
Like, that's what it's all about, you know. So what part of South Dakota did you go through?
We went through I-90 pretty much. So I think there's a... You know what? I'm going to switch it to a anything goes open topic, since I don't want to just kind of talk about my trip on it. Remembering Ed Schultz. I wish there were more people that would come in and share what they thought of Ed. People who watched him more, at least.
I mean, I'm familiar with Ed's work. Like, one thing, I was talking about body language in the chat, and that's something that Ed is very good at, because he didn't play those games. Like, he would allow himself to be himself in interviews.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's powerful. People pick up on that. In the same way that they pick up on the manipulative tactics of politicians.
They're
and their
always
body
speaking
language.
with their hands, you know.
They're trying to touch you and shit.
Yeah, hey.
So, like, people pick up on that too, but they also pick up on honesty.
Yeah.
And that's like what Ed Schultz projected with his body language. He consistently did that. He never played those fucking games. If media was less consolidated,
Yeah.
Ed would have found a niche.
And
he would have stayed with a certain company for 10 plus 15, 20 years or something.
Yeah.
He was solid reporter.
Here's another thing that I liked about Ed Schultz. So Congress attacked RT or just independent media, maybe a little bit of both, and so he just kind of went on a rant. This is back in November 1st, 2017. It's a quick video. It's about a minute 29, so I'll go ahead and play it. Give me a second.
And finally tonight, I want to comment on the last 2 days of the Senate and House hearings on Capitol Hill focused on social media and the accusations cast about this network, RT America. The unprofessional and completely unfair assessment of this network by the Senate Intelligence Committee is disgraceful. We are not propaganda, and we do not take orders from any government entity involving content on RT America. Furthermore, none of the journalists that work at this network have anything to do with any advertising campaign on any social network platform. I think the unwillingness for these committees, both House and Senate, to call on any of our employees, or this anchor for that matter, to testify speaks volumes about their agenda to make excuses for the outcome of the last election. The United States has a long history of election meddling in other countries. In fact, recently, former President Obama actually cut commercials for Macron in France and openly instructed the French people how to vote. The Senate Intelligence Committee? That's what they're called? Really? Senator Dianne Feinstein should be ashamed of her ignorance, not knowing what impressions are. And the American people are supposed to count on them for judgment on what to do about social media in this country? They should do their job and work for the American people and talk to the people who are really involved.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I don't think anyone ever told Ed what to say or what to do. I think they knew better than that. Like, he wouldn't listen. Like, so they didn't bother trying. Like, but to say that RT, now, he's right. The level of investigation, that this, you know, the accusations that the Senate made against RT and a lot of them are just garbage. But to say that RT is completely uninfluenced or not influenced by the Russian government is, I think, false. And that's reflected in their coverage of, like, Chechnya.
I think the coverage of American news by American news people aren't affected, because I figure they're going to be truthful anyways, and if they're going to be truthful, it works in the favor of Russia. Now, when they're covering outside the U.S., I think there might be meddling by Putin or the government of Russia, but I would say in favor of Ed and a couple of others that are on RT that cover American news in the RT, I don't think they're affected by Russia too much or at all. I think they're pretty honest about that. And of course, you can see YouTube has it that RT is funded in whole or in part by the Russian government, and it lists Wikipedia. So I mean, they don't even do that with, like, I don't know, Fox News, MSNBC, CNN. They don't have anything on YouTube saying CNN is funded in whole or in part by the oligarchs or whatever, you know,
by a multinational company. Like, why doesn't a multinational company have to put something like that on?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So,
like, even if they aren't directly funded by the government, maybe abroad they are so powerful that they might as well be the government in a given country.
Yeah.
Or they approach the level of
multiple nations. That's because they're multinational. So, not just the Russian government. It's funded by the European Union or whatever. I don't know. The Zionists, New World Order. That's what
almost all international companies receive some kind of government funding or subsidization, I should say. They're subsidized in some way. Either if it's through tax relief, or if it's through you know, some shit, like they subsidize these companies. So whether the government is just handing them money is not the only fucking indicator if they are being influenced by a fucking foreign power.
Yeah.
YouTube's system is garbage. It's fucking worthless.
One question that we haven't really covered is, do you think Ed Schultz died of natural causes? I don't think so. 64 is kind of young.
Yeah, but it was obvious he didn't take care of himself too well, man.
He looked good. He looked okay.
He had a huge gut. That puts a lot of strain on a person's heart. And he also probably had a pretty crazy work schedule.
Yeah, but
who knows, man? I haven't seen any indication that he was assassinated or some shit like that.
I don't know. One thing I would like to do is look at, well, of course, autopsy report, whatever. Of course, they'll lie, and who does the autopsy, figure that out. But also, what he was doing recently. I mean, if he was working, if he was feeling good, if he had any recent hospital visits. Usually, if you got heart issues, you've probably seen the doctor a couple of times. There's some warning signs. It's not just going to hit you when you're sleeping.
Well, I think I read earlier that he had been off of RT for the past couple of weeks.
Okay.
Like he wasn't doing, like he'd skipped a couple of shows or something. So there might have been some issues. Who knows? Yeah. We'll find out as time goes on.
Every time I'm going back, like I said, I keep going back in history to see how far forward that they were looking at things and how things are now. See a lot of journalists dead. And I kind of wanted to do a coverage on that. It feels like, what's the most dangerous job in the world? It's like journalism. It's like, what? How journalism or news reporting, how would that be the most dangerous job in the world? But it seems like it, because you see a lot of these people dying. Natural causes, suicide. It's like,
well, the problem with calling everything a conspiracy is, like, when you do that, it fucking helps to mask the real conspiracies.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
Unless it's just a smaller part of a bigger conspiracy.
Just looking at it, it's believable. Like, well, based on what we know now, it's believable that Ed Schultz died of natural causes.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen anything to indicate otherwise.
Yeah.
I mean, not just the reporting I get, but just, you know, looking at the dude. He's a bit older and fucking out of shape.
Did he tweet anything at Hillary Clinton?
He tweeted something at Jenks. That's how high TYT has risen.
Yeah, right.
They're hiring assassins now.
That happens.
Fuck that Ed Schultz.
All of intermediate personalities would end up being suicidal. Because I think pretty much everyone out there doesn't really support Jenks in TYT that much.
I think they're fucking with their numbers. Like, again.
Yeah.
But that's on this topic, so. But Ed Schultz, like, again, if media wasn't so consolidated, he would have found an outlet that fit him, like an American outlet.
Well, he also did his own show.
Yeah.
The numbers weren't huge, but I think he could have grown it more, because I don't think that's the thing, is a lot of these journalists, a lot of these anchors, whatever, they're just used to doing their thing, preparing, doing their research, doing their investigative journalism. They're not really tech savvy. So, you know, how he's not really good. He probably wouldn't be able to work a lot of things. And I think he on the RT one, he had someone who's a producer, probably helped him out. Usually they're younger, you know, and learning the ropes of journalism, but also probably handling all the tech side. So I think he would have eventually figured it out, but I think that's where a lot of the old school journalists and stuff like that, they have everything that a network would offer, you know, all the technical stuff, all the producers, all the editors, they you know, some people who help him investigate stuff. How's it going, Ryan?
What's up, dude?
Did you want to host something after, so we don't have to?
Don't have to. Just keep going, dude.
Say anything about Ed Schultz? Did you watch a lot of Ed?
Nah, I didn't. But one thing I want to say, it's a pretty sad world when we think, did a journalist die of natural causes or was he helped off the planet?
Yeah.
You know, it's a pretty sad indictment of how we are as a people.
Well, that's our first reaction, it seems like. It's always like a conspiracy. Whoa. A conspiracy theory as opposed to, oh, the government's telling the truth. Right?
Exactly.
Or, yeah, that mainstream media, they're telling the truth. We're always second guessing as just...
Especially when someone dies so young. You know what I mean? Like, 64 is quite young in this day and age.
Yeah.
You know, so it's really strange for me to get my head around that a natural reaction is to go, did the establishment top him off?
Yeah. Do you think you'd live up to 64?
Me?
Yeah.
Nah.
No?
No.
Why not?
I'm unfit. I take antipsychotic medications, which shortens your lifespan by 20 years. Yeah.
Damn, dude.
Is
there a way that you can reduce that trend? Or,
nope.
You know?
No. I look at it, this is my opinion and only my opinion, but I look at antipsychotics as being like a sandpaper to the brain. It just slowly, you know, sands your brain away.
Damn.
Yeah. You start losing your memory, and then you start losing, you know, your motor functions, you know, sort of deteriorates as well. I've seen a lot of that happening with me, stuff like that. So, yeah.
Is there alternative types of medication that... No?
Nah. They all fuck with your head, dude. That's what they're designed to do.
Yeah.
Well, when you feel it start slipping away, like, head straight to the TYT studios and, like, just feel free to do what you want. Let me just put it that way.
Nah. I'm not that type of person.
I mean, I feel like I could probably live up to 60 naturally. So 64, I don't know. It depends on certain people. Like, it depends on how long his relatives might have lived up to, you know? That's usually a good indicator.
My life might be cut short by doing stupid shit. Like, but other than that, I have old relatives. Aside, if they don't die from cancer, like, they live to be pretty old.
Yeah.
Late 80s and 90s for my family.
Yeah.
Depends on if there's like a Korean War, I think, for my male side of the family. Female side of the family seems to live long. So we'll see. If there's a Korean War Part 2, yeah, I think I'll probably be cut short.
What a depressing topic. But it is believable that Ed died from natural causes at this point. But Ryan, you're absolutely right. It's sad that a sizable portion of the population is questioning whether person A, B, or C died of natural causes, or if they were killed.
But in this day and age, do we consider like a heart disease as natural?
We shouldn't. We do, but we shouldn't. Like, the companies that feed us this shit. I mean, it's our choices. Don't get me wrong. A lot of the time, or it's something that we can't control of. You know, it's a matter of choice for most people. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Like, but at the same time, like, these companies shouldn't be allowed to just dump toxins on the fucking population. And that's what a lot of these sugars are, man. They're just toxins.
Yeah. They'll
kill you.
Like, that was one great thing about going up over to, I guess this pertains to the topic. Wyoming, the mountain water, the springs, not the springs, but the runoff from the mountains, the creeks, really clear. And then, like, most of the rivers, as you're driving through, is very kind of muddy or silty. I wouldn't want to drink or eat any fish out of those. Then in middle Nebraska, there's a place called Long Pine. It's one of the, I guess there's not a lot of natural springs out there in the U.S. Someone was saying there's only 7, and one of them was there. Like, the water is like 52 degrees year round. Hottest days, your coldest days, it's 52 because there's spring water from there. And it's very, very clear. I mean, I thought Walden Pond was clear, but the creek, I could probably see at the very bottom of the creek easily. It's just awesome catching fish there because you can see the fish swimming as you're reeling it in. But yeah, all the water, you know, unless you're coming from a pristine source where you're not going to have runoff. I mean, even my neighbors, everyone here, which is crazy, suburbia, they take care of their lawns more than anything else. You'll have the most pristine lawns you'll see. Neighbors will be like, hey, do you need help with your lawn? Because they want a nice lawn in their neighborhood. So they use Roundup, and we don't. We just like it natural. Or my wife will probably she's wanting to get like very, very powerful vinegar solution. So it's like at least 4 to 8% or something like that. And you just pour it directly on like the weeds. They'll pretty much die.
Another solution for that, like there's certain bushes, and don't ask me what they are. You're going to have to look them up. But there's certain bushes and other plants that you can plant in your yard that will discourage like specific types of insects.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you look into that, like maybe that'll help. Like if you're having problems with, like, let's say, I don't know, some fucking beetle or something, there's certain bushes that will discourage that type of beetle.
Yeah. It's mostly the people with the nice lawns, they don't like weeds. So it's just weed control. But the thing about what people don't realize, for the nice lawns, that runoff is poisoning the waters, poisoning the fish, poisoning people. And it's also a lot of the weeds, what we call weeds, are edible. They're actually good for you. You can they grow naturally. You eat them. They have vitamins, minerals, calories, and some of them are pretty, but people would prefer just a nicely cut lawn.
There's all kinds of stuff you can eat. Like there's certain types of milkweed you can eat. You can eat cattails, dandelions. Mm-hmm. Like there's a lot of shit.
By the way, Garden Shirley saying in an interview came out with Ed last month calling Clinton and the media out. Now a month later he dies of natural causes. All right, I'm in the boat. He got killed off. That's me. Garden Gnome is the natural. What about you, Ryan? You're the tiebreaker.
Natural death.
Damn it. Okay.
Yeah. You're outvoted.
Shirley, you gotta come in here and support me.
Because you just don't know what kind of health problems he had.
Sure.
You know, you don't know if he had a genetic problem or whatever. You know, mm-hmm. You just don't know until they come out, till they do a autopsy. And then aren't autopsies in America published to the public?
I think you have to request them, and they have the right to seal the autopsy in a court, but I think otherwise you can access it. I think that's how that works.
Okay. So there was a study done in the US. There was a study done in the USA, and I've just put the link in chat about the effects of antipsychotic, antidepressants, and mood stabilizers on the risk of physical disease with people with schizophrenia, depression, and bipolar. So it's an interesting read. Sort of gives you a really good in-depth sort of idea of how antidepressants affect things like obesity, diabetes, thyroids, all that type of stuff. So,
well, my ex-wife was on, geez, what was it called? It was one of these SSRI uptake inhibitor drugs, you know.
Yeah.
And she tried to get off of it.
Hi, Shirley.
And she started experiencing these kind of like electrical shock sensations through her body.
Yeah, I get them.
All right, Shirley's in. Are you voting for natural or conspiracy?
I'm going with conspiracy. He was on vacation and shocked RT. They was waiting for him to come back Monday.
Makes sense. Where did you go to vacation?
And it's weird that he did that interview, what was it, a month ago, and called the Clintons and the media out.
Oh my goodness. Hey, Shirley, where did he go on vacation?
I guess he was on vacation after the when the holiday was coming up.
Yeah. Do you know where he went?
Well, he must have been and stayed home in Washington.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's right. Because it was Washington D.C. where
Yeah, I thought he was fishing because he's an avid fisher.
Oh man, I like this guy even more.
Yeah, you go to his Facebook page, you see him holding up. Him and his wife, they go fishing, and they be getting fish.
Yeah.
I think Garden Gnome got offended that you cut him off.
Oh, sorry, Garden Gnome. I just wanted a quick vote. Sorry.
He was in the middle of a really deep and meaningful comment, and you cut him off. You're an asshole, Eben.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Hey, it's sir asshole to you. You need that pompousness. See, he's back. He's fine. He just wanted to set up his video. His
back with his AR-15 to shoot your face off.
Yeah.
It's like the barrel of a shotgun. So, what did your husband think of Ed Schultz, Shirley? Because he probably used to watch him on MSNBC, right?
Yeah, he loves them. And I still have a video saved when he was out in Wisconsin, standing with the union. I think it was the teachers fighting. Yeah. I forgot what it was, but he did a rant about Rush Limbaugh and told him to bring his fat ass down there. I was cracking up. I saved that video.
I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, if you have a link for it, play it.
So what did your husband think when he went to RT?
He said it's a conspiracy theory because, you know, people put out that somebody died and they really didn't.
Yeah.
Because I found out in Jamal's, no, where was I at? What the fuck? What chat room I was in today? Somebody said, rest in peace, that show. I'm like, what the hell are they talking about? Then I went and searched. The right-wing media, the right-wing newspapers mention about him passing away.
Anyways, 772. Who is that? So I don't have to.
Isn't it Nash?
Is it one of the?
Oh no, I recognize.
Remember our deals, trolls.
Hey guys, yeah, it's me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, innocent until proven guilty, and I don't know if that exists anymore. It's like guilty until proven innocent. And that's kind of the way I look at the media and the stories that they're giving us, you know. So I agree with Shirley. I'm going with conspiracy. You know, you guys are going to look at me like I'm guilty until proven innocent. I'm going to look at you the same way. You guys got to prove to me that it was natural.
Yeah.
Just like Anthony Bourdain and just like a bunch of other mysterious people who just happen to just vanish, you know, like the Supreme Court Justice, Scalia.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I suspect foul play all the time. You know, prove to me it wasn't.
And then whenever you try to get more information, they go, I'm sorry. We can't provide you that information. So they won't even try to prove it to you. They don't want anyone
even
knowing.
if they do get an autopsy report, they won't let you know. Just like Seth Rich, nobody has his autopsy report.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see.
Yeah, we had another Starbucks incident here in Philadelphia.
What happened?
It was a University of Pennsylvania graduate went to Starbucks at 34th and Market. He ordered a coffee. He told her he had a speech impediment. He stuttered. He said, and his name is Sam. That's what he said. And the barista going to say, okay, Sam. So after she gives him the coffee, she wrote SSAM on his cup. He showed it on Twitter. They fired the barista. But I said, they got a problem. That one day of sensitivity training, that didn't work.
Sorry about that. I was distracted. Dang.
And the National Association for Stutterers made a comment about it.
What'd they say?
I forgot. It was on the news. It was a long article too, because his friend was telling the story about what happened. They showed the cup, and they sure enough had it on there.
Okay, I want to play back that video, Shirley. Is it the one over the Mr. Ed crack over 8 years ago, or is it more recent?
Let me see. This was in 2011. He told Rush Limbaugh to wrap your fat ass in the flag. I was cracking up. That they don't have a video on here now.
Let me share it. Let me see if this is it, okay?
And that Dylan Radican rant, that's a pretty good video too, before he got canned.
Okay, I'll play that later.
David Schuster got
doggone it, I found out today, guess who's a fan of the Ed Show? It's the drugster. That's right. Rush talking trash about me today. Rush, I tell you what, why don't you come on my program and we'll debate about anything you want to talk about. Come right here on the Ed Show. Be sure to check out my playbook tonight. That's coming up. You're going to love it. Welcome back to the Ed Show. In my playbook tonight, I'm going one-on-one with the man, Rush Limbaugh. This guy goes after me, little old me, today on his radio show. Listen up.
Now, there's a show on MSNBC named after a horse, the Ed Show, the talking horse. I think they brought the horse out of retirement to host the show. And the horse, Mr. Ed, is talking to a former CIA officer, Jack Rice, about the Sotomayor hearings. And Mr. Ed, the horse, says to the CIA officer, I think you come from a profession where keeping your cool is pretty important. Did she pass the test today?
I love it. Rush, I got a challenge for you. You know, why don't you just come on this program? Come on, buddy. Your audience would love it, radio or TV, and debate me about anything. Let's see how good you are, Rush, one-on-one. Let's go, buddy. You know,
be safe as can be. Heck, MSNBC, we got HD, we got the wide screen. You'll fit in there just fine. Now, there's a history here. Back in 2004, when I started my national radio show, the Today Show came out to Fargo. Jamie Gengel did a story on me, said, oh, here's Ed Schultz, a liberal talker, going to do a national talk show. And Rush went after me on the air. He says, I don't know who this $4 an hour guy from Fargo is. He'll never make it. Well, Rush, here I am at 30 Rock. Hell, I'm doing you a favor. I'm giving you ratings. I'm promoting you right here, Rush. Come on, let's get after it. Your audience would love it. Your audience hates me. Your audience would love to see you just stick it to me, but you won't do it because you're a coward, Rush. I've always thought that. Always thought that. Now, here's what we could do. Now, listen. It doesn't have to be politics, Rush. I mean, I know you couldn't cut it over at ESPN calling football games. So what do you say we just take the field together and tackle one another, huh? Now, if you really don't want to exert yourself too much, we can go fishing, and I'll show you how to bait the hook if you know how to do that. That's kind of a mainstream thing, isn't it? Or we can even take a page out of your old buddy Shooter's playbook and we do some hunting. I promise I won't shoot you in the face. Now, while we're at it, I'd kind of like to play some golf, too. I mean, I hear you're pretty hot shot at golf, too, you know. Rush, don't tell me you cheated golf. All right, or here's an idea. This is an easy one. Why don't we just go on back to the North Country and get behind my ski boat? We'll do some water skiing and we can do a little competition. Just how much in the mainstream are you, Rush? Take the challenge. Come on, your listeners would love it. You'd get big ratings. You'd show up Big Eddie on MSNBC. Who knows, maybe they'd even cancel my show. You'd be so good, Rush. Nah, he won't do it. Just dreaming.
Was that it, Shirley?
No, he was in Wisconsin with the union because the anti-union bill that Scott Walker was passing. He was live in Wisconsin with the union workers, and Rush Limbaugh had said they were freeloaders.
Oh, okay. I see it. What I like about that is, yeah, you do have to be on your feet, pretty smart, and allow someone to come on and just talk about anything. That's what. More respect to Ed right there. Okay, here we go. I found it.
He totally stomped Rush Limbaugh on that. Called him a coward.
Yeah.
I agree, with stomping and spitting at Rush Limbaugh. The guy is a degenerate. In
I love when he called him
every sense of the word.
Drugster. All right, I'll show this one. This one's, I think 8 minutes.
I think they all are.
9 minutes.
I think they're all degenerate.
Rush is particularly fucking slimy.
Welcome back to the Ed Show in Madison, Wisconsin. It's time for the takedown. Bottom feeders, freeloaders. Those were words used today to describe our teachers, our nurses, and all of these hardworking people standing right here with me tonight. Ironic, considering those words came from a guy making $50 million a year. Yet Rush Limbaugh said today, we are either on the side of the Wisconsin protesters or we are on the side of our country. He played a few sound bites from some of his fellow Americans here in Madison, and he mocked them. Here it is.
We have a montage here, protesters whining about what they want.
I've been teaching for over 25 years, and I deserve respect for what I do, and I don't deserve to have my rights taken away.
Walker wants to take away my rights and everybody else's rights.
We're making history. We're making change. It's necessary. This is like the 60s all over again.
I think we've lost the sense of democracy. I feel like what people in Egypt are fighting for right now, that's exactly what I feel like I'm fighting for right now.
What an absolute idiot. It's a crying shame that this glittering jewel of colossal ignorance is teaching students. Comparing this to Egypt. Most of us are more mature.
Shut the fuck up.
This is what we want. I want my dignity. I want my respect. I want my this. I want my health care. Well, go earn it. It's not about what you want. In your case, it's about what can be afforded. Trying to make themselves out to be oppressed. Not in Egypt. Bunch of people who feel entitled to be freeloaders.
So Americans, we now have come to the conclusion from the conservative right, admitted by the drugster himself, that if you want health care, if you want a pension, if you want some guarantees, education, and protection in the workplace, that you're a freeloader. Do you know that? Did you know that you're a freeloader? Did you know that all of these Americans freeloaders? Did you know that? I'll tell you what bothers me about the conservative right. They told us on 9/11, we will never forget. They told us on 9/11 that we'll be together. That we're Americans. They wrapped themselves in the flag, and Limbaugh was right in the middle of all of them saying, we'll never forget. You remember those hats? New York Fire Department.
I'm sorry, but this guy is full of shit.
Those brothers and sisters? Now, didn't they go into the towers to try to save fellow Americans? Well, you know what? Limbaugh thinks those people today are freeloaders. Yeah. Now, maybe it's understandable that a guy who tried to go to college but dropped out wouldn't respect teachers. But I will say this to the camera tonight and to America. If you want to follow the Limbaughs and the Becks of the world, and you want to turn your back on firefighters, you want to turn your back on police officers, you want to turn your back on nurses, you want to turn your back on brothers and sisters who have stood in solidarity to fight for the middle class in America? Is that wrapping yourself in the flag? No, wait a minute. No. The conservative right in this country, they say you're nothing but a bunch of freeloaders. That's what they say. Hey, Rush, why don't you wrap your fat ass in the flag on Monday? Let's do the takedown tonight. What's your name, sir?
Craig Yap.
Are you a freeloader?
I don't think so.
What's your response to that?
To that?
Yes.
Well, you can kiss my...
Okay. What's your name?
Johnny Gullickson.
That?
Absolutely. I go to work. I work an average of 48 hours a week.
What do you say to the conservatives in America who say that you're a freeloader and that you're out here begging?
We're not begging. No, we're not begging. We just want our rights.
What's your name, sir?
I'm Scott, and I can tell you that my father was a firefighter, my son is a firefighter, and I'm a firefighter. We're here, and we appreciate everybody out here. Everybody.
What's your name, sir?
Joe Conway.
Joe, good to see you again.
Yes, Ed.
Your response to the way Limbaugh, Beck, Hannity, all of them, the way they have portrayed this crowd throughout the week.
Exactly like he said. They wrapped themselves in the flag on 9/11. They forgot us about at 9/12. We are the people that do the job every day. The teachers, the school workers, the firefighters, the cops. We're it. We're not freeloaders.
Thanks, Joe. Your name, sir?
Malin Mitchell.
What do you say to the protesters? What do you say to the Limbaughs of the world that say on 600 radio stations, millions of listeners, you're a freeloader?
We're Americans, and you look around you. You look around you. We're with the teachers. We're with the police officers, with the firefighters, and we're going to be here until the job gets done. And I guarantee the firefighters will be here every day that you folks are here. We're with you.
This is some fake shit. How can you listen to this and not be like, this is some sweet crap?
Limbaugh made the comment to his audience that we're either with the protesters or with America. How do you respond to that?
We are America.
Are you America?
I'm American. We are America. Actually, Ed, this is the heart of America, Wisconsin. I personally would like to invite Rush down, and I will even pay for his plane ticket with my hard-earned union money so he can come and see what's going on here.
You folks are outstanding. There's one other person that we don't want to let off the hook. There's a guy over on Fox News, and he's got a big audience. To his credit, professionally, Bill O'Reilly has done, he's got a big audience, no doubt about it. But Bill, you've always said that you're looking out for these people. Bill, bring your show on out here and show these Americans. Show them that you care. Come on, Bill. Come on, you don't have to be afraid, Bill. I walked through the crowd last night. You don't have to worry about security. These are Americans. They love America. You don't have to worry about that. Come on out. Come on out and prove that you're looking out for these folks. You won't do it, will you? I didn't think so. This is the Ed Show on MSNBC, live from Madison. We're right back.
Yeah, well, I have to agree with you, Nash. That is very, very, I don't know what you would call it. Very
divisive,
yeah.
Divisive, staged, and anyone that says works at 30 Rock is suspect.
Yeah, I mean, but still, I think there's at MSNBC, he was told not to cover certain stories. I mean, just like Bernie Sanders, but some of it probably didn't matter to him. I think like his producers loved that. Like it was something that Ed wants to do, which is actually go out and support people who are workers, right? But then also the producers were like, hey, at least say something like, hey, make fun of Rush Limbaugh, make fun of Bill O'Reilly. That way it brings in the ratings type of stuff. Because if you just go out,
yeah, and that's kind of disgusting, though. Yeah, I mean, like, are we talking about solutions? Are we talking about uniting the people? Are we talking about being divisive and we're going to label and point fingers? It's them. It's the Republicans. It's Bill O'Reilly. It's Rush Limbaugh. It's it's those people.
Yeah,
I mean, like that to me is not a solution, and it's not helping anything.
Yeah, I haven't been a big watcher of Ed Schultz, but when he was in RT, Shirley, do you know if he did a lot of stuff like that still, or it was quite different?
Well, he got to travel in other countries, and he learned more from doing that and being on RT than he did in MSNBC. Yeah, because I feel like RT, at least the ones that I've watched him on RT, that it wasn't like that. It wasn't a big ruckus of a show. Yeah, I mean, you can kind of see the difference between mainstream media and like a podcast, like when he does his one-on-one type of stuff or things like that. And it's definitely a big show.
I think he was just a flamer for the left. And I don't mean flamer, and I mean like he was like, fanning flames on the fire.
But which left?
Just trying to...
The progressive Bernie left. That's no longer a thing, or like the neoliberal left.
It wasn't even the left per se. It was just hate the right.
Oh, yeah.
There's your enemy. It's them. I thought it was very divisive. I didn't think it was constructive at all. And I thought he used 9/11 to as a crutch. So that's pretty damn lame.
But I mean, when the right does it to the left, is it not okay for the left to call out the right on their hypocrisies? And of course, this is how all the opposition and divisiveness occurs.
It's not okay on either side. It's not okay. I mean, we're pushing each other further away instead of uniting us. And you know what happens when we divide?
Yeah.
Well, that was in 2011, Ed.
Yeah, but we still had problems in 2011 too.
But he called Obama out too.
Yeah. It's a tough situation when someone keeps attacking you and you're like, dude, I don't wanna attack you back, and they keep attacking you. It's like, what are you gonna do? You know. So.
Well, I think your points are valid, Nash. Like, there's the way I see honesty is in matter of degrees. I don't see it as an absolute out because I don't think anyone is completely honest. So there's no doubt that Ed Schultz was a careerist. Okay, and there's no doubt that what he was doing was like fanning the flames on the left intentionally, partially because of his career. All right? But that didn't make his specific points untrue. Like, regardless of what his motivations were, Ed would say a lot of things that were accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the value we can find in him. You know, we should just really focus on, you know, what he's telling us rather than his motivations. And it's the same.
That's a positive way to look at things. Absolutely. I agree with you there. I mean, they have to tell some truth. You can't get up there and lie 100% all the time. No one will watch you. So you're going to tell some truth. That's just how the business works.
Well, Ed told a lot. He told a lot of truth.
Yeah,
like,
he did.
More than most of these people. And that's what I mean
not bite his tongue.
That's what I mean by matter of degrees. Like, Ed told more truth than most of these people.
He could have changed like Rachel Maddow.
Yeah, Rachel Maddow tells less truth than most of these people. And it's, you know, it's easy to say, like, you know, a lot of this is subjective. Like, none of these people have a vision, have a looking glass into the future. They aren't economists and scientists. They're just news commentators, right? So we have to take them as such. Like, viewing these people as thought leaders is a mistake, whether you're talking about any of them. You know, whether you agree with them 100% or not. I mean, they're just commentators.
Well, no one agrees with anyone 100%. I mean, that would just be the most boring planet ever. You know, no one agrees 100%. Not even husbands and wives, children and parents. I mean, we'd all be driving the same car, wearing the same clothes, living in the same house. No one agrees 100%. Yeah. It doesn't happen.
Now,
I'm always right.
What I liked about Ed, at least from all the videos that I've watched, is it looks like he didn't use a teleprompter. I mean, everything he was saying, everything he was discussing, it came up off the top of his head. And I think when you watch other commentators, that you can kind of tell that they don't have it memorized. They're just kind of not going off of just kind of what they know. I mean, I felt like if you were talking to Ed and having a conversation, he'd be telling you he knew the issues. I mean, just like he would know the issues when he's talking to Bernie Sanders type of stuff. It wasn't like unless he was really, really good at memorizing, but you could tell that there's some mannerisms of his where he knew to make it short, like he was saying to his producer, not his producer, to this new sports guy at RT, saying just use less words, people will listen more. And
well, Ed was a rabble rouser, you know. Yeah. Like, he was a bit of in many ways, Ed was a better version of Cenk. Because Cenk does the same thing. He rabble rouses. Mm-hmm. But, you know, Ed didn't engage in the level of bullshit that Cenk does. And Ed's smarter than Cenk, to be blunt about it.
I wonder if sports has anything to do with it, because he started with sports. Because in sports, you can't bullshit around, right? You can't say, like the worst NBA players can turn around next season and be like one of the top 10.
That's a good point, dude. Olbermann came out of sports too, and you know he was. Go ahead, Cheryl.
And he used to be a conservative till he married his wife Wendy, and she changed him into a Democrat.
Keith? Are you talking about Keith, Shirley?
No, not Keith. Ed Schultz.
Ed, okay.
He was on right-wing radio at one time.
Yeah, that makes him even more suspect to me again.
More suspect.
Yep.
That
suspects everybody.
Unions and working people.
I mean, I think this would be more of the rabbit hole that I would go down, Nash. Now, is this from the aspect of like the progressives as being the placeholder for the New World Order type of thing, or just normal controlled opposition tactics?
I would just say he went where the money, whatever the money paid him to say.
Okay.
See, I wouldn't say that. Like,
no,
he's
not a Rachel Maddow.
I wouldn't say that he was just like a careerist, period. Like, Ed was a careerist, but like he also had a point of view, and he would honestly express it. I think he would pump it up. I think he would be hyperbolic about it, and I think the network was fine with that because of the reasons that you stated, Nash, because it's profitable. But to say that he was just like he would just read anything that was put in front of him to make money, that I don't think that's the case.
Mm-mm.
Do you know
he was compassionate about the things he talked about and what he did.
Yeah, I mean, you're passionate about what you do. I understand passion. But if you're, I mean, that's Noam. I think that's kind of like, like dancing on the tightrope. It's hard to decipher one from the other. Yeah, he's a little bit of that. A little bit.
That's the way reality works, dude. It's not reality is not black and white. People are a mixture of things.
But I mean, Nash has a point. Is there anyone from mainstream media that gets to the top that we can totally trust 100%? I mean, or is it just gonna be based on their actions? I mean, if it's just by actions, I don't see anything bad with Ed Schultz to think that he's gonna.
You could compare like Keith Olbermann. Keith Olbermann was great when he was on MSNBC, and that's how Rachel Maddow got her own show, because he always had a co-hosted show when he was on vacation, and they let him go because he ripped Hillary Clinton in 2000 when she was running against Obama. He ripped her about what she was doing in the primary and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he came back with GQ, I'm like, oh, he's so pro-Hillary now. And it just shocked me.
Yeah. And
Ed Schultz wasn't like that.
Yeah, we didn't see Ed Schultz sheep herding Democrats back to Hillary Clinton, or like what Jenks did with Hillary Clinton after Bernie Sanders, right? It's like, we got to put all our support in Hillary. Hillary's great. Ed Schultz was like, no.
But rather than focusing on who Ed Schultz was or whatever, I mean, I think the more important question is like, were his points about, let's say, Standing Rock valid? Were his points about the Wisconsin teachers strike and the the strike they had in Wisconsin? Like, were his points valid?
Mm-hmm.
Like, in a lot of times they were, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were. I don't mean to poo on Ed Schultz. I respect the man, and I don't want anyone to die. That's not what I'm about. You know,
you're right to critique him, man. You're absolutely right to ask questions about him. And as far as Ebon, like, we should not trust anyone 100%. These people are like tools. They're tools for us to use to provide us information. We don't know them. Like, we don't know what their character is like. We don't know what they are really like as people. Everything we know about them comes to us through these damn filters. You know,
but it seems like they're all the same people. You know, and so it kind of gets hard. You get lost in it. I mean, I don't really watch mainstream media a lot. I watch Fox News just because, you know, they have a lot of hot women on there. With the volume off, of course.
That's crazy.
With the volume off. I don't listen to them. I just, put it on.
All I can provide is my feedback, which is just the behaviors and actions. Like, we didn't see him turn around and support Hillary Clinton. We didn't see him like support Vladimir Putin or like praise Obama as like the greatest president, or George W. Bush giving him a hug saying he was a great guy. Or, I mean, he put his feet to the fire and he took a stance. Like, he could have just been okay with, hey, don't air Bernie Sanders stuff. We'll keep paying you hundreds of millions of dollars, to stay on MSNBC with your Ed Schultz show. And he didn't. He had his scruples and he left. And he did his podcast for a while. And it's like, well, this podcast isn't going anywhere. And the RT gave him a job. And then,
Yeah, well, MSNBC kind of went through a ton of flipovers. A lot of people came and went.
Yeah.
From MSNBC. A lot of people.
Oh, do you want me to play back the Dylan Ratigan rant?
Sure. Oh, yeah, I love that rant.
Yeah, I like it too.
Okay, I'll
he was gone after that.
Going after the bankers and the money and the taxes and...
Well, he used to work on Wall Street, so he knows how it goes.
Can you guys send me a link if you guys have it? I don't see it. Oh, I see. This might be it. Let me share it.
And the Federal Reserve helped.
$70 trillion
I understand
that, but goes to you to walk out a $4 trillion solution, which is basically just a way for the Democrats to avoid dealing with this until 2017. I'm not here to talk about plans to deal with this till 2017. I'm saying we've got a real problem, and I'm tired of Republicans and Democrats who either want Republicans who want to burn the place to the ground, and Democrats, with all due respect, who want to offer a plan that gets it through their end of their second term of their presidency, and then screws me and my kids when it's over. And until we do that, we have to deal with the extraction that is at foot. It is the reason the financial markets are behaving the way they're behaving. That is a mathematical fact. This is not some opinion. This is a mathematical fact. Tens of trillions of dollars are being extracted from the United States of America. Democrats aren't doing it. Republicans are not doing it. An entire integrated system, financial system, trading system, taxing system that was created by both parties over a period of 2 decades is at work on our entire country right now. And we're sitting here arguing about whether we should do the $4 trillion plan that kicks the can down the road for the president for 2017 or burn the place to the ground, both of which are reckless, irresponsible, and stupid. And the fact of the matter is, until we actually, and I'm sorry to lose my temper, but I'll tell you what, I've been coming on TV for 3 years doing this. And the fact of the matter is that there's a refusal on both the Democratic and the Republican side of the aisle to acknowledge the mathematical problem, which is that the United States of America is being extracted. It's being extracted through banking, it's being extracted through trade, and it's being extracted through taxation. And there's not a single politician that has stepped forward, Susan, to deal with this.
But there's only one right now. The leader of the free world, whether you like it or not, the president of the United States is arguably one of the most powerful individuals we have out there.
But
and
Susan,
he's our
what you're saying is exactly the point that Dylan is making. It's not about one guy. It's about all of them.
No, I actually disagree. I think Dylan's saying it is about one guy.
It is about one guy.
What would you like him to do?
I would like him to go to the people of the United States of America and say, people of the United States of America, your Congress is bought. Your Your Congress is incapable of making legislation on healthcare, banking, trade, or taxes, because if they do it, they will lose their political funding and they won't do it. But I'm the President of the United States, and I won't have a country that is run by a bot Congress. So I'm not going to work with a bot Congress and try to be Mr. Big Guy. I'm working with the bot Congress. I'm going to abandon the bot Congress like Teddy Roosevelt did, and I'm going to go to the people of the United States and I'm going to say, you've got a bot Congress. And until we get rid of the bot Congress, which is Jimmy Williams' constant point, which is get the money out of politics, and until a president says that's the problem and says he's going to fix it, there is no policy that I can possibly see, no matter how brilliant your idea may be, or your idea, or my idea, or her idea, or your idea at home, is that idea will not happen as long as there's the capacity to basically fire a politician who disagrees with me by taking funding away from him. Is that a fair assessment?
Money in politics is the root of all political evil. It is corruption at its worst. And until we step up and kick that out of the park, it's going to be the same system all
and only the president could do that. We're going to
No. Congress has to do it too. The Congress has to do it too.
But I'll tell you what. How bad does it have to get? How much money has to be extracted? How many things have to be heard?
Down to brass tacks. Okay, physically, what do? You
go and give a speech
right now.
Right now.
Right now.
You say.
And then what happens tomorrow?
Tomorrow, what happens is you begin the process of actually investing in solving the problem. So I come out and I say, how? I create an infrastructure bank with 2% blending immediately. There's that. Once I explain to people the problem, once I explain to you have cancer, once you understand how screwed up your trade, tax, and banking policies are, believe me, you will have no issue when I incorporate an infrastructure bank that I fund with repatriated offshore money that I bring in and then use to create 2% direct lending to every business in America. Because when you realize that the banking system is fully corrupt and defrauding us, and I come out and say that, which is what I want my president to do, that at that exact moment I say, you know what, we got a screwed up situation here, people. You all know it, and now what? I'm going to admit it. And as a result, not only have I admitted it, but we're going to begin the process of solving it like grown-ups. They did it in World War II. They did it after the Civil War. They did it in Latin America with the Brady bonds. We are not seeing it happen now. The panel stays a little more emotional than I anticipated getting at work this afternoon, but what am I going to do?
Now, what's funny about that one, I liked it. That was great. The women's reactions are like, at that, like, you know, that big look at the beginning, and then he goes out to the other male guy. He's like, and then you see.
I would just say thank you, Dylan.
Yeah, that was good.
Thank you.
And then if you looked at the background, like the people who are working on the computers and stuff, you see them like getting up out of the chair, going.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good stuff.
Yeah, he used to work in the banking industry, and I bought his book too. His book was damn good.
What does he do now?
He wrote a book about Wall Street, and it was really good. I can't remember the name of it. I have it here, but it's in my bookcase upstairs.
Is he on any shows or anything like that?
No, he was running for Congress in New York.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
He failed.
Oh.
He didn't.
Yeah.
On the front page of the Wall Street Journal the other day, they actually said that the Federal Reserve helped Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan pass stress tests by giving them, you know how corrupt they are.
He's right. Like it's the capital flight model. We've been talking about Central and South America lately, and that's how we have been extracting wealth from Central and South America is through this fucking capital flight model, and now it's been applied to us. And the U.S. is being fucking capital flighted. It's having its treasury drained, and it's having its wealth consolidated into specific sectors under specific individuals and groups. And it's the same model that was used in South America, except we have multinational corporations doing it to us.
Detective work 101. Follow the money.
Yeah. Do you guys know the Koch brothers are donating to the Democratic Party?
I'm not surprised. You're always gonna If you're wealthy, you're always gonna play, or powerful, you're always gonna play both sides. It's just simple as that, because you can afford it. It's like betting on black and red on roulette, just hoping the green doesn't hit. Either way, you're gonna get a payback. So.
And I found out in a tweet that Donald Trump donated money to Cuomo's campaign.
Yeah. There's, I mean, it's what, 2 years now, and is it gonna be another 2 years when we're gonna see all this show from Trump and all the supporters saying, "Oh, it's 4D chess went to 5D chess. You just gotta wait out another 4 years." You know,
3D Candyland, 2D Candyland is what it is, because they just keep doing it over and over.
Yeah, and then meanwhile, while all this attention is focused on that drama, we slowly start losing our rights. We get gun control laws passed. We get net neutrality repealed. We get more swamp people into office, into his administration. You know, we get a whole bunch of stuff that's just slightly worse. Things get slightly worse all the time, or even actually bigger worse, I'd say. But we don't pay attention to that because, hey, look, he's unveiling corruption. Hey, look, there's QAnon. He's saying everything's good with Trump, and we just need to support war. You know, it's just, yeah. I don't know. I still say he's the Obama.
Yeah, and people get upset with me when I say we need to abolish certain taxes, and that's always a problem with people. Like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you shouldn't have an income tax. Your work is your work. You get your money, that's yours.
Yeah.
You don't need an income tax. You don't need property taxes. That should be gone too. Look at the taxes that have been implemented since the creation of the Federal Reserve.
Yeah,
from 1913 to today. Just look at all the taxes that have been implemented. And it's ridiculous because the government is too big.
It's too big
to fail. They are too inefficient. They are very inefficient. We don't even know where our money goes. Where does our money go to? Killing people across the world?
Actually,
policing the world?
Conspiracy theorists say that they're actually building stuff on either the moon or the Mars or underneath the Earth.
Actually, they don't. I think a lot of the conspiracy theorists are like, the Earth is flat, man, and there's a dome, and you can't even get out to orbit.
And
you can't go back to the moon anymore because I saw a guy from NASA say, we don't have that technology anymore.
Hey, that's me. You're talking about me.
Hey,
mankind's greatest achievement. We just threw it all away. We just figured, we don't need this anymore. We'll do it better next time.
Well, you see, that's the problem. The problem isn't necessarily taxation. The problem is the fucking Federal Reserve System. Because
exactly.
We have to have money to pay for public funds and public works. We need
it was July 4th the other day. Taxation without representation.
We need a level of taxation.
Now,
but the Federal Reserve, we're not creating our own currency. This is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah. So Nash, are you thinking more of like taxation at a local level, at a town level, county level, state level, or no taxes?
I don't know.
What would we do?
Well, we know taxation is theft. All right.
Federal level, I would say, yeah. I'd agree with them.
I'm not sure that I have the solution. I'm not sure I have the solution because obviously we need a government and we need to fund them. But they're just inefficient, they're greedy, and they're way out of line. So it's just
I always feel like if they were efficient, they wouldn't need to tax as much, and we'd still get a lot of beneficial programs out there, and a lot of people who work at the federal level paid well, and do away with the crazy pensions, especially for the people. First off, people in the Senate, people in Congress, They don't need those crazy pensions. They don't need those crazy salaries. Cut that stuff off. I mean,
well,
yeah,
you know, a good place to start is enforcing antitrust laws, because that creates a wider tax base. Number one, you split up these fucking companies, and you know that's a good place to start. Start taxing the ultra wealthy at a proper fucking rate. It's not necessarily about, you know, you could lower property taxes if you did that. You could lower, like, you know, or possibly even eliminate sales tax, or I'm sorry, income tax for a huge portion of the population if you did that.
Nash.
Crap, I lost connection.
Nash is blinking on and off.
I lost connection, guys. We were talking about taxes and
yeah, just start enforce antitrust laws. That will create a wider tax base. You'll split up some of these fucking things. Start taxing the ultra wealthy or ultra wealthy interests at a reasonable rate, and lower the tax burden on the middle and lower classes. I mean, these are a couple of simple steps we can take within our own system as it stands now.
If Iceland can do what Iceland did, why can't we?
Well, it's
because there are other countries that would probably come in and try to stop us. I mean, I'd say we're so blended in, mixed in with within Europe, within Israel, within probably Asia, especially China. I mean, all of our.
I know it's a giant circle jerk.
Yeah, it is.
Now we could do something similar to the banks here, if we're just to take the bank issue by itself. Like, we could start holding some of these bankers accountable for their actions.
No,
I mean,
not our government. It'd have to be us. But if it was us, we wouldn't even start. We wouldn't even end with the bankers. We'd go with the politicians too. It's like,
I know, and this is like the divide. Like, people are not even like paying attention to the banking system. I mean, you guys are hip. You guys have been around. You guys know what's going on. You know, but most Americans have no clue about what, you know. They don't even know what the Federal Reserve is.
Yeah.
If you want to read a good book on the Federal Reserve, read Secrets of the Temple. That's an excellent book on the Federal Reserve.
Always pointing to your Illuminati books.
Wasn't it a couple of banks that was holding the drug cartel money, and they got a slap on the wrist? I think, wasn't it Wells Fargo and HSBC?
HSBC for sure, and Deutsche Bank keeps getting nailed for all their crimes. You know, it's a slap on the wrist.
Wells Fargo was different. Wells Fargo did something bad too, but it wasn't that. It was something different. I can't.
They all
do. Wells Fargo was fucking with customers, you know. And,
opening accounts that they didn't want open and all this other crap. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little different than stealing and drug money and
cartel money
and all the black ops money and
we got to depressing topics.
All of them do this shit, and they all get slaps on the wrist. It's happened to all of the major banking consortiums. I can't think of one that it hasn't happened to.
Yeah. They get caught rigging Forex, LIBOR, the silver and gold price, just on and on and on. No one loses their job. No one goes
I think the credit unions are the best.
And it just goes through all the fucking range of shit. Like you were saying, it goes from straight up drug dealing and weapons dealing, profiting off of human trafficking, all the way to like creating and popping housing market bubbles intentionally so they can make money. I mean, there's like the range of crimes is fucking across the damn board, and they're all guilty of them.
Yeah, what hasn't been touched? What hasn't been corrupted?
I forget.
You're both right.
I forget which
You're
one
both
it was. I forget which one it was in the 80s that was just like the cartels wouldn't have survived without it. I want to say it was Bank of America, but I could be wrong. Maybe it was SunTrust or something. But yeah, just like billions and billions of drug money, like just going through this major bank, this licensed banking institution. And people knew about it. Nothing was done. I think a few heads rolled when someone finally put a stop to it. But
and well, on Dylan Radigan's rant, he was kind of alluding to it, but he didn't quite get there. But like, it doesn't matter how great your ideas are, but if you're gonna have these corrupt politicians implement it, it's not gonna go very well. They'll purposely make it horrible, just so that they could say, "Oh yeah, we tried it, it didn't work," and the blame is on the idea, and not the implementation, not the execution of it.
This is a sickness.
Yeah.
It's like a machine, man. Like, if you don't fall in line with it, you're just booted out and replaced. So
yeah,
if you try to stand up against it, you're booted out.
You die of natural causes.
There's a great video of a guy who said that. He was like, this goes back to probably the Kennedy era. There was a guy on the steps of the White House or the Capitol building, and he's screaming, we have to stop the machine. The machine, it's like black and white footage. It's old school, but he made a fantastic statement. If you guys remember.
If you can find it, I'd like to know.
Yeah, if you find it, send a link to Ebon.
Yeah, he's screaming. He's like, "You got to put the cogs in the wheel. You got to stop the machine." He specifically said the machine.
Well, Chris Hedges uses a lot of that rhetoric too. Like, he's like, we need to, and a lot of other people have. We need to throw our bodies on the cogs of the machine.
I mean, it's hard to stop it. I mean, we can't even stop the small stuff. Like, in local towns, we can't even stop, like, Costco or Walmart or even like McDonald's or Burger King. I mean, it's hard to stop them from taking over. And once they're in, there goes all the little shops, because everyone just finds it cheaper at the big chains. And then once the competition day's out, they could raise the prices again. I mean, I think if I go to Burger King, buy the veggie burger and fries and a drink, and I think if you exercise it, it's like a large, it's like $7 something cents in the middle of like a cheapest living area in the country. It's like $7 or $8. It's like, so I could probably make a veggie burger and fries and a drink, and it would cost like $1.50 to actually make, and you just triple it. It should cost $4.50, right?
As a side point, man, I was just reading something about veggie burgers the other day. Be very careful about the brands that you buy. Like, some of them use some fairly toxic shit.
Yeah.
I'd rather just have some organic beef, man. If we're gonna have burgers, let's have burgers. Life is short.
Yeah. The thing is, driving out, so from Columbus, Nebraska to Story, Wyoming, which is where I stayed at, so much land. And once you get past Nebraska into the sandy hills, it's just grassland, because it's just a lot of hills. It's not good enough for crops, so there's just grass, but there's just so much of it and so little cows. And it's like, we could just grow so many grass-fed cows out there. But a lot of that land is empty. It's like the route I drove. If it was New England, the population, I would have passed by like 40 million people. But because it's in the middle of nowhere, I probably passed for like 40,000 people. But I mean, it's a lot of land out there. Living could be cheap. Trying to get infrastructure like cable, power lines, water's definitely out there. It's easy. Land is good. It's cheap. The soil's good. you could definitely have towns and cities out there, but no one builds it. Everyone's building it out. They're increasing, and all the money is funneling out to the cities. It's taken out of these small towns and going into the big cities, and you just see a lot less. Basically, the ones who actually come and live in the nice big ranches and farmlands, and they don't even do ranching or farms, are the people who make a lot of money and decide they want to retire out in the frontier, in the mountains, and they actually like fishing, they like hunting, they like outdoor stuff. But you don't really see the same people who are farming and ranching out there actually retiring and living out there. They're probably moving into the city. Or they just don't have enough money, so they sell their farm and they just find a small little area in a nowhere town, and that's it.
It's crazy out there, man. Is that the first time you've ever driven through like those, like out west and shit?
This is probably my 4th time. First time with the kids. But I've done it a lot. I love it. I always tell everyone, if you're gonna do anything, take a cross country drive. Drive through places that like are uninhabited, and just look at the small town atmosphere, the less touristy areas, and just the natural land and just the landscape as it changes, and where it can get flat to like really hilly and then really rocky, especially when you hit the Rockies. It's beautiful out there. And it's,
well, in the U.S., before they developed the freeway system, right, there were still roads that went across the country.
Yep.
Right. So what you do is, like, when you're planning your trip on a map, you take those old roads.
Yep.
Like the ones they used to use.
Don't take the interstate freeways. Take the highways. But that's if you have time. That's the thing, is people don't have a lot of time, so they're gonna take the freeway. We took most of the freeway.
Ventura Highway in the sun.
All right. It's really hot and humid in here. I'm gonna end it. I'll do it. It's weird. Open topic or anything goes, but if Ryan, if you want to do it, but I know you've done it every night in the last couple of days. If you want to take a break, Ryan.
I'll keep going. Yeah, it's all right. I'm hearing you.
Okay. So you want to start yours?
Listen to some music.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I am.
What are you listening to?
What do you listen to? Yeah.
You're Smashing Pumpkins.
Oh.
1979.
No,
I've seen
today.
Smashing Pumpkins live 3 times.
Okay.
I saw him once.
Ryan Bannock will start his show. I'll give you the reins. Reigns of Castamere. People don't know what that means.
Be safe, Ebon. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll still be on. I'll talk with you guys at Ryan's channel for a little while. I mean, you guys see me sweating? I'm in the basement where it should be like 60 degrees. But it's
Jack promised you a fucking air conditioner in the basement of the TYT studio, but he hasn't delivered yet.
Yeah.
Ebon, you need a huge sponge.
Here, I'll show you the ground. Can I show you? Yeah, I'll join. Shoot, this camera. Can I take the camera off? Here, I'll take the camera off. Oh man, that's hot. Whew, camera's hot. Okay, I'll leave the camera there. I'll use the phone and join in. Let's see. Oh wait, Ryan started. Never mind. Here, maybe if I take a picture. And can I share my picture? Oh yeah, hold on. Just give me a second. Can't see it back here. Alright, give me a second and I'll stop the stream. I'll let people know Ryan's link. Hey,
Ryan, is it okay if I call in?
No, you're already there.
Stay.
Here.
You're already
stay here.
You're already in.
I'm just showing people how to get to the channel who are just viewing.
Yeah. So it's how it works is Ebon's OBS uses the Zoom window, and my OBS uses the same Zoom window. So,
all right,
we just